Yo, welcome to the podcast, CypherBeastT.V. I am your host, Tony47, and we have a real amazing blessing on the show today. He's from the Northwest, Massive Monkee Crew. We got B-Boy Twixx. How you doing?
What's up, man? I'm good. How are you, brother?
Good. Yeah, awesome, man. Such a blessing to have you on once again. A
Oh,
little bit
thank you for
about
having
me
me.
before we start. I'm from Portland, Oregon. The context of this new channel and podcast, it explores people's mindset like yours, inspire, and through the experience through your visual lens. So, B-Boy Twixx, how did you get exposed to breaking or dancing?
Ooh, I've always been dancing since I was a youngster, family get-togethers and things like that. But I didn't start dancing in front of peers until like sixth grade, seventh grade, like elementary school, middle school transition. Specifically into breaking, not until like '95. So I was about a freshman
Okay.
in junior high school. And the first time I was exposed to it, just one of my now best friends who I met then, this kid, his name was Paul Percumpra, and he came to my school, but he was from Seattle, and the school that he left, he used to go to Franklin. So
Uh-huh.
Franklin was a high school in Seattle that a lot of my now current crew members came from. Juice Boogie, Bryson,
Oh, word.
Secret Squirrel, a lot of the Massive Monkeys guys either went to two schools out in like the southern Seattle area, which was either Franklin or Garfield. So my like now best friend, or one of my now best friends, Paul, came from that school, so he already was like breaking and knew how to break a few years, and then his parents got a different job, so he moved out to the south end, out in Federal Way, where I was at. So he ended up
Okay.
coming to my school, and I just caught him breaking in the halls one day. Just was like, "Yo, what the what's that?" Like, "Yo, you teach me how to do that." And then from that point on, you know, um, yeah, I just have been breaking since. So yeah,
Nice.
man,
So you
but
kind of
yeah, that's
gravitated, you
yeah,
loved it, and you're just like,
yeah. I just found like the style I like because it definitely like merged a lot of things and disciplines that I was into. I was a student athlete growing up, so that was my focus, was just scholastics and sports. Dancing was
okay.
something I just did around the house and just for leisure, and it could never dawned on me like to think of it as like a career move. It was just something I did, something that was just culturally part of, my upbringing. And yeah, when I found
Yeah.
that style, the style made sense. I was a comic book nerd growing up, and the style itself just embodies superhuman optimization, like, and I just naturally gravitated to that because it had all these different aspects and cultures and different vibes
Oh,
that just molded into one thing, with martial arts, with sports, with the athleticism, dancing, all of it was all within that one speck of things. So I was like, oh yeah, I want to do that. So
nice.
then the next 25 plus years, here we are.
Dope, dope. And when you back, you said sports, and you mentioned you said you did martial arts.
Yep, since I could walk, since I was about 5 years old. Stepdad is a martial artist, and yeah, I've been doing that since I was a kid, like growing up. So I was kind of born into
Nice.
that world in that capacity, and kind of had like a little bit of like a royalty sense. Was like a prince in that world. My dad was a very well known martial artist, and so
Oh
growing
wow.
up, I was getting a lot of, I think, revered energy from other adult martial artists, and I just didn't have that concept of like who my dad was, growing up until like my later 20s, early 30s. And it's like, oh, and it just clicked, like, oh, dad was the shit at martial arts, and that's why everybody used to kind of give me this Prince energy, like, oh, you're Mr. Rainey's son. Oh, okay. I used to always just think they were
Oh,
just these weird old dudes, like, yo, why are these old people like acting extra nice to me? And this is weird, and I don't know, and they keep bringing up dad. And it's like, what is going on? But it's like, oh, now I get it. Okay, they were giving me like early respect because I was kind of born into, this martial arts lineage. But yeah,
yeah, heck
it's
yeah,
kind of having that feeling like some of the other b-boys and b-girls that we know that have aunts and uncles that kind of grew up in hip hop. So I had that in the martial arts world.
yeah. Nice. Nice. And I have three kids, but my younger girls, I took them to martial arts class, and I could
Nice.
see a lot of the discipline
Oh
they
yeah.
preach and teach you, right? And do you think that kind of help archive some of your breaking?
Absolutely. I mean, just even my way of life in general, how I go about it is very Eastern philosophy. It's very martial artist, being connected to yourself and helping you be connected to everything else and being balanced and being centered and all that. That's all Eastern philosophy living. And yeah, that's been a part of me since as long as I can remember. And so it definitely bleeds into a lot of how I take care of myself and all the things that I do lifestyle wise. It's just like, okay, get it, you know.
Nice. That's tight. That's dope. Definitely different avenues of hobbies, different things you can learn and utilize it to breaking
Right.
or something else. So that's pretty dope, man.
Yeah, man.
So back in your early days in high school, or high school you mentioned, and then
Hmm.
when, if you can remember, when did you start competing, or if you can remember your first competition, was that in
Ooh.
high school or was that a little
Yeah.
bit
It was
after?
a few little dance yeah, at the time we had a few we used to call them break wars back then in the 90s. I don't know why. That was just
Okay.
like the terminology used, but it was kind of like in like the jurisdiction that you were in, like in the cities that you were in, because going up to Seattle was quite, hard if we didn't have a car. And that was around the time I was, what, 15, 16. So, of course, you had to only venture to Seattle when we had friends that had cars that could drive out.
Hmm.
So my first like contests were like locally in like the city I grew up in, like different high schools around my town. I didn't really start competing and going to competitions like till like 98. And originally my first, I think, competition like in Seattle was was a freestyle session. Actually, it was freestyle session
Oh,
Seattle.
no
When
way.
freestyle session came to Seattle, and was on a tour. It brought out
Oh,
like
wow.
cats from the West Coast, and I would think that was the time it brought out Cross brought out Soul Control and Rock Force. So it was like three or four cats from Rock Force, a bunch of Soul Control cats. So it was like Cujo, Charles, Drunk Funk, Jeff, Gerald, and Vietnam. And we all like there was like a
Wow.
big like Cali versus Seattle cipher battle and whatnot. And I think that was the first time I ever like started going to some of the competitions and some of the jams locally when we had more people coming and bringing their jams to our state. So freestyle session, Crazy Legs was
Wow.
doing the break beats. He would do this event called Break Beats in Seattle once a year. Mighty Four would come through, so because Cross and Polsky had that affiliation, so
Yes.
we didn't have a whole lot until like the later 90s. But yeah, I think about about 97, 98.
Wow.
And
Damn, that's
I
crazy.
wasn't massive yet.
Okay. Yeah, speaking of that, I want to get into Massive. But before that, a lot of the competitions you said that came to the Northwest Seattle, right? Was you
Hmm.
said some of the big competitions. Mighty Four is
Yeah.
really big. You're
Yep.
talking about Cross One, Polsky. They're definitely a huge impact and influence today.
Oh yeah.
And it's incredible. Having a freestyle session in Seattle in your
Hmm.
local town. There's definitely and that's just ongoing, and it's still to
Right.
this day, and it's one of the biggest competitions in the world. So,
Oh, absolutely.
um, man, that's so cool. That's so cool. So loop back to Massive Monkey. When was Massive Monkey developed or formed?
Massive Monkeys was established in 1999. It was like I said, the leftover cats from certain Seattle legendary crews like Boss Crew, ABC, Untouchable Style Monkeys. Who else was around at that time? Mad Flavor, who I was a part of. They were still around. Crews like Battle Zone,
Okay.
and that's where Fredo, Free from Circle of Fire came from. Was from an old crew called Battle Zone. Oasis, the
Oh
list
wow.
goes on. There was a bunch of Seattle crews that were well known in the early 90s. And so that was, a good 5 to 10 years ahead of a lot of the massive cats. So we were all like the little kids from those crews or like the little brothers from those crews. Some of those
Oh, okay.
dancers still dancing. And then that's Massive was originally Juice Boogie, Dancing Domes, Little Lazy, Geronimo, and Juggernaut. And then when Bryson and Jeromski got affiliated into the crew, that's when the two names merged together, because Jeromski came from USM, which was Untouchable Style Monkeys. Bryson came from a crew called ABC, which was like a branch off of Boss Crew, which they were like one of the top crews in like the early 90s. And then
Oh wow.
those four, so Massive with Boss and Bryson, or with Bryson and Jerome, when they got into the crew, that's when the collaboration of the name came together. So that's when Massive met the Monkeys, and then I was coming up to Jefferson, every couple of, twice a week or so, when they had the or open practice, and that's where like the hub was, Jefferson, like the Beacon was, or Jefferson Community Center on Beacon Hill
Okay.
was the spot. That's where a lot of Seattle's hip hop kind of funneled through throughout the rest of the city, because like all the cats from DVS went up there. So Fever, Hughes, DV1, Soul One, rest in peace, that all them guys practiced up there. And that was, like I said, that was like that central hub area where a lot of history when it comes to like Seattle's breaking scene and b-boy scene, b-boy b-girl scene came through, was like a lot was through Jefferson Park. So hence why our community center, we named it the Beacon, because it was on Beacon Hill Avenue. And it's kind of like our homage to, the community center where we spent a lot of time. But that was how the crew was formed. Like I said, 99 was the year. We were doing local competitions, in Seattle for like a good few months. And I think by the time that we hit 2000, that's when we went out to LA and we went to Summit. And that was the Summit that we had the 2-on-2 that Juice and I had won. And that was kind of like what launched and what got the ball rolling for Massive Monkeys, like in terms of like the scene as a whole, like nationwide.
Wow, that's dope. Wow, some history made, from then, and a lot throughout those last 2 decades, and so wow,
Tell me about it. It's like a time warp.
for sure, and definitely made an impact in your crew, impact into your scene in Seattle. Yeah, till this day, and I know that I do want to get into it, but before we get into it, I know that there's a new gen in the creation, or is with Massive, but I definitely want to dive into it a little bit down. But before we do, I definitely want to kind of keep that story going on from kind of the start of the of your dancing and breaking, right? And so you guys competed in battle some of the top competitions. You and Juice, Juice Boogie. I did see a video of you guys doing Lord of the Floors, the previous, right?
Right.
It was you and Juice, and then a couple years later, it was you and Jeromski.
Actually, backstory to that is, Juice and I were supposed to do Lords of the Floor together, because we were battling, I think, about like a good 5 or 6 months prior to Summit. So we had done Summit and won Summit, and then so like the next 3 or 4 months after that, it was Juice and I being flown out to a lot of these different 2-on-2s. I think the first one we got flown to after Summit was this one called Battle Lines, and that was in 2000, and that was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then people were asking us to come here, come there, and it was all based on the 2-on-2s. So Juice and I had been dancing together for quite some time, and so when Lords of the Floor, and we had news of Lords of the Floor coming around and what they were doing with the brackets and how they were introducing the grade 8 and that whole concept, I just assumed it was going to be him and I, because we had contact with a lot of Circle of Fire cats, and Bob was one of the original organizers. Him and John Jay were like part of the whole process when Lords first happened, and when Red Bull first approached, the B-boy scene. They had like a big contribution in that, and they had, big positions because they were the ones helping Red Bull understand, the culture and which teams to get, and all that. They were their funnel of information at the time. So Bob, because we used to practice with Circle of Fire like every now and again because we always see them, in the city, and would just
Yes.
occasionally always just have sessions together and whatnot. But Bob told Juice about the plan about Lords of the Floor and kind of gave him like an inside track and a heads up months before so he could be like, yeah, get your teams ready because this is what's going to happen and this and that. Third. So naturally, since Juice and I had been dancing together already, everybody else had assumed they were like, okay, yeah, we're going to have two of the top 2-on-2s from each city nationwide, and they're going to come here. We're going to choose 8, and this is how we're going to put them on the pedestal, and we're going to call them the Great 8. And how they're set up in the bracket is they're already in the top 16. Everybody else has to try to get up to, the Great 8 platform. So they had like an open registration to where it was like 64 teams of 2s were battling, and this was all in one day, mind you. And then they would funnel out the 16, so it would go from 64, 32 to 16, and they would take those 16 and then put them with the 8 invited 2-on-2s for the top 16 bracket, and then there was all the cross bracketing and whatnot. So that was like the adventure of the day. It was like, oh, this is like the Kumite for real. Like this is an extreme day of dancing, and you're trying to also now battle who's appointed like the top or the stars of that time. So Juice and I were originally on that list, and then I think 2 weeks before the event, he makes an executive decision. He wants to bring more people from the crew out into the spotlight, and and do that whole thing. And and that was always something that was big with Massive, was like our crew camaraderie. And so he just didn't tell me he chose Jerome as his partner until 2 weeks before we have to do the battle. And there was like a big meeting, of course, and of course, that feelings were hurt and a lot of discussions and a lot of back and forth and arguments and whatnot, because I kind of felt like, well, that was a little underhanded. Like, why would you wait 2 weeks until to tell me? And then I got to choose my partner based on the remaining people who don't have partners in our crew, because at the time, Massive Monkeys is like 30 something deep. Not everybody dances, but everybody is like a hip hop head or has like some kind of contribution in terms of skill, in terms of the hip hop elements, where we got a few MCs, we got some graffiti artists, we have some dancers, we got some DJs. Like, it's a whole hip hop crew, right? And so some of the guys that were left that didn't have partners, I had to choose from that squad. And, I get intense when it comes to my training and trying to prepare and whatnot. And some of the other guys just don't have like that regimen I do, or that regimen I keep. So I was upset, and not only did he choose a different partner 2 weeks before telling me we were going to do the competition, he also said that they were going to take the grade 8 spot. Where I'm like, yo, bro, that's how is that fair? Like we got that together. Like, me and you have been dancing together for months, and then all of a sudden now, and I was the newest in the crew at the time, so it was just one of those things I kind of had to just take on the chin and just kind of go, okay. And I was upset, and like some family laundry. It was just like, oh, okay, but I still love my brothers and whatnot. But we still went out and did our thing as a family. So I think we had, ending up, I think it was like 7 teams of 2s in the Lords of the Floor competition, and they ended up being Little Lazy and I for the first year, and then Jeromski and Juice for that year. And
word, okay.
Yeah, man. And that was, like I said, that was a crazy day. We supported each other all in all of our battles, and Lazy and I ended up finishing top 4. And Juice and Jerome actually got beat out quarterfinals against Style Elements.
Wow. Nice.
So they didn't make it as far as I think they were planning. And Jerome is also, he's very competitive as I am, because he also grew up playing sports. He grew up playing soccer. So he was like a student athlete as well. So, and Juice is one of those guys that it's like, everything, the planets have to align, and he's kind of, his ability is he's dope when everything is just in flow and in the pocket and in alignment. And then there's days where it's off, because it's all based on how he feels, and you sometimes you just catch him on a good day and you just see him and it's like, whoa, like definitely his like vocabulary and dance he definitely inspired a lot of dancers out there, because even still to this day, like when people ask about Massive Monkeys, the first person to answer, like, yo, where's Juice at? Because
Right.
before, like, the whole crew was out, he was the one that was kind of promoting Massive Monkeys, because he was traveling by himself. So, like, a few years before we had even established ourselves, he was already out at, like, doing, like, competitions in Florida. He was going to, like, who can roast the most. He was going to freestyle session by himself. Like, he would just kind of venture out. He was like a little bit of a nomad and just kind of a wanderer, but he was always like, yo, my crew back home, yo, my crew back home. So by the time that we came out, everybody was like, okay, we've been hearing about the crew. So that was like the debut was Summit, was like the year 2000, but then at least 2 years before that, Juice was already out and made a name for himself and kind of was like, yo, that dude Juice from Seattle. And oh shit, because he also battled Flowmaster at one of the breakbeats that Crazy Legs brought to Seattle and like took it to Flow. And like made Flow
no
like,
way.
and that was like a big moment too. Like the footage is still around somewhere. I think it's floating on YouTube, but it was like a big thing. It was like, yo, who's this cat Juice that just got with Flow? And this is like when the time when Flowmaster was young. He just got put was affiliated with Rocksteady and everywhere. That's like, this is like I said, 99, 2000. So it was like, yo, what just happened?
Yeah.
So Juice was like the face for a minute, at Massive Monkeys. And so that's why it was like, oh, okay. Like they're in
Blowing
the
it
grade
up.
8. Yeah, blowing it up. So by
Yeah.
the time that, we came around with the rest of the crew, we had like a little bit of catching up to do.
For
But
sure.
Lords was it. Lords was it. And then, yeah, it played out the way it did. And Juice was just not having an on day. And, Jerome is very consistent. He trains to be consistent, like myself. And it wasn't until the second Lords of the Floor where we actually got paired up. And that was kind of like the two halves coming together. It was like, oh, because Jerome and I hadn't danced together until we were training for Lords of the Floor. And like, of course, we were all in the crew, but still very young, still getting to know each other, and each other's like ways and personality traits and all that. And so when Jerome and I kind of stumbled on the fact, it's kind of like, oh, we kind of come from the same background with being athletes and liking to train and like going to this intense like place when it comes to preparing. It was like, oh God, it was a meeting of the mind. So it was like the two yin yang halves
Nice.
coming together. So by the time that we got to the second Lords of the Floor, Jerome and I were practicing alone, trying to get ready for that for like 6 months. And it was like, that's where like magic was happening, when that whole fire and ice thing started happening. Um, so yeah, it was just
The chemistry, you guys
that chemistry just
clicked
naturally built,
straight up. Yeah.
just happened. It was like, okay. And then from that point on, yeah, we were like the duo to know in Massive Monkeys, because we were also like the new Ness and Fever, because Ness and Fever used to do a lot of like 2-on-2s together, and this was after Fever got into Rocksteady, and
Oh, no
Ness
way.
was
Okay.
like still like healthy enough to dance, and so Ness and Fever were a duo that was like, oh, they had chemistry, their routines were nice, they had just a certain magic together. And then so we were kind of like touching in and tapping into that. And so we kind of like ended up being that later. And, like I said, that's when the fire and ice concept was like, oh yeah, got it.
Wow. That's dope. And within that era, that during that timer for a while, the duels was a big impact, right? A two
Oh
versus
yeah.
two.
Oh yeah. Because you always saw like the dopest battles with a 2-on-2, because you had enough time to rest, because your partner can go out and you can, gather yourself and, seeing your crew chemistry and like what kind of routines and stuff that you guys would develop together and how creative you got, just always kept things very exciting, because you had more time to collect, versus the one-on-ones, which are dope. But it's just you. It's just, and sometimes just people who just aren't in that space where they're like, they're not comfortable with it just being themselves. Sometimes, you want a friend, you want a brother, you want somebody at your side, to know it's like, okay, you got my back, I got yours. Okay, let's do this.
Yes.
And that was that era. It was a big thing.
And then fast forward, was it like 10 years later?
Yep.
2024,
And
Lord of the
we had trained
Flies.
so hard for that Lords, and we had made up a lot of the routines now that are like classic Massive Monkey routines.
Uh-huh.
Like, especially like the duo routines, a lot of those routines came from me and Jerome because, like I said, we practiced a lot together. So we had so much material ready. And then so when
Yeah.
we lost first round, we were like, yo, like, and, the politics happened and things end
Right,
up
right.
the way they end up. And we were like, how? Like, oh, we didn't even get a chance to use this. We didn't get a chance to use that and this and that. And it was so many, like, so the Jackson routine, the statue routine, like all these routines that Jerome and I are known for. That's like all of our classic material. We had all
Uh-huh.
that stuff like way back in
Oh,
2002. And then we just kept bringing it out with different crew competitions. We were just, oh, let's just bring this out the vault. So we just had stuff in the vault when it came to like 2-on-2 stuff. Like, and then it wasn't until Freestyle Sedition 2005 in Korea when that was kind of like our redemption to Lords, where me and Jerome actually made it to the finals and then battled against Lilu
was it?
and Brahim.
Okay.
Pokemon. But our bracket was literally the hardest bracket because it was everybody that we battled when we started traveling internationally. Like we were going through all the crews. Like we had Maximum Crew first round, we had Drifters Crew second round, we had
Oh,
Project
no
Soul
way.
third round, and then we had Pokemon in the final. So Jerome and I's bracket was literally like the gauntlet. But
Wow.
and again, we were like, yo, we gotta make it. We gotta do something at this, like at freestyle session, because I was like, this is the closest thing to Lords as we're gonna get, and then and the same concept. They didn't have like a grade 8 bracket, but they just was like just all the best 2-on-2s globally. So from Korea, they had Last for One, Project Soul, Drifters, Moy and Elmo from Havoc Horo, us. Yeah, that was so Pokemon Crew. This was when Jinjo. This is the Young Wing and Skim. So this is before they got popular. Like
Oh,
the
really?
2-on-2 matchups were crazy in that freestyle session. That freestyle session was absolutely bananas because there was just Ron and Super Crew, Ronnie and Omar were there. Like this is like the best of the best of the best. And it was like, okay, here we go. So yeah, no, that was like our low key redemption to Lords. And then fast forward, 23 years later, here he is, Lords returns, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I
That
think I
was
like Ronnie had told me about it. And was like, yo, we're doing Lords again. I was like, word. First thing I did was text Jerome. I was like, yo, Ronnie just told me they're bringing back Lords. I was like, you down? That's all Jerome said. Yeah, or that's all I said to Jerome, and then Jerome goes, yep. I was like, Ronnie,
uh
we're in. Because we were like, yo, yeah. He was like, yeah, we're going to invite you guys back, and we want you as one of the teams, like one of the legacies, and this. And we were like, yeah, without question. They're like, no hesitation. I was like, oh, word? You want? Bet.
wow. Dope. Dope. And with the experience through all those high competitions, high level, athleticism and the experience through that, like was it always like you say you were more competitive side. So
Yeah.
has that always been in you? Like you're like, oh, we got it. I want to hit this up jam. Let's compete in this
hmm
jam and keep this jam. Just kept that hunger going.
Oh, absolutely. Me, like growing up and having that student athlete background, when I'm in a competition setting, then yeah, I'm competitive, like as you're supposed to be. That's where that space and that energy is accepted and celebrated, and where it's supposed to be channeled is through competition. It's like, oh, okay, cool. This is the place to be competitive, or if you're going to be competitive and have that drive, and it's also a good, like I said, a close parallel to martial arts. It's the testing of skills. It's being gladiators in the
Mm,
Coliseum. So that's
yes.
always how I saw it. I always saw it as, oh, this is like martial arts because this was like one style testing against another style and one master testing against another master. And it's healthy competition, as well as on some gladiator type essence where it's like, oh, we're getting in the Coliseum. It's the best man standing. And who doesn't love being in that element where it's like, oh, okay, so and this is what the people want to see. They want to see who's going to be the victorious man. Like I said, it was just healthy competition, and I'm all for it because again, that's the space for it. So I grew up doing it, so I'm
Yes.
used to it. So of course I was like, oh, okay, bet. So I can still be an athlete with this, with dancing because there's that artistic aspect of b-boying and dancing and what that whole polarity is with the whole dance and how it's supposed to be an artistic expression and a creative one. And it is that when you put it in those confines. But on the other hand, when you're talking about competitions and brackets and competing and testing skill against somebody else in that aspect and in that capacity, then it turns into a sport.
Yeah.
So both things definitely exist, with the dance being the subject of kind of being the thing that can bounce back and forth between worlds, because there was that, like in our generation, there was that whole political line drawn, like versus art versus sport. What is it? And, one side of the community wanted it to be, this is art, this is an expression, this is that, and it shouldn't be a sport. And then all the athletes and people who were athletic and who love sports are like, well, this is also a sport, and like we got to recognize that. And for a while, there's still like that debate was still going on, and I'm like thinking to myself, like, it's both, but it's whatever you put. It's whatever you put it in terms of confines. When it's artistic, then it's art. When it's competitive, then it's a sport. When it's in that and in that spectrum, but sometimes it was competitive and it wasn't in a competition setting. Usually, it was on the street, and that was a whole different thing. That was, this is an alternative to street life, and that's how breaking even started with the kids in the 70s. It was like, this is how we're going to settle our differences, because cats on this block don't like cats on that block, or they got some politics going on, and they're like, okay, well, we don't want anybody to die, so we got to have an alternative to, settling these beefs and settling and representing our colors and representing, and that's Kenny and Legs and Ness's generation. That was the 70s in New York. So it was a whole different competitive nature. It had nothing to do with sports. It was life, and it was territory. So it came from a whole different place. So all the evolutions throughout each decade came, all the different aspects of breaking that you could gravitate to, if it resonated with you, whether you liked the artistic aspect of it, or you loved, the street culture aspect of it, or you liked the competitive and athletic aspect of it. There was things to latch on to and inspire people and then make them, gravitate towards the dance, because it had all these different modalities.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Most definitely. 100. Like you explained that like 1,000%. Like you got the art form and the competitive, which creates as a sport version, right? And this, you pick and choose what platform you want to showcase,
right,
or what do you like, right? Speaking of that, I definitely want to maybe tap into it later down on the podcast, because after speaking of sports, it's it's going to be the Olympics down this year, right, towards the fall, and so that's the whole sport aspects, a lot of athleticism, but then the art form with it, it's intertwined together. But before we get into that, we talked about Lord of the Floors, your duels, kind of the expose how you got into it, your competitive side. Within the crew, the Massive Monkee, you guys impact a lot of people mentioning, and you guys compete in a lot of competitions, not just competitions, but you definitely competed on one of the top NTV shows, which is ABDC, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when I was watching that, I was really I was like, oh, dude, we got B-Boys, but season 2 was Super Crew, and then, and then Massive Monkee came out. I think it was third season or fourth or something. I think it's third season.
Fourth season.
Was it fourth? Okay. Yeah, dude, that was tight. Like, did you guys see like the first couple seasons? You're like, hey, dude, let's audition and see how we do, or
actually, I think because that time around that time that show got popular, that's when Jabberwockies won the first year, and that was a surprise. And we were like, yo, what the hell? Right, and so that was, I think, the thing that kind of put that show on the map and in our spectrum, because of Jabba winning the very first like crew dance competition. We didn't even know about that show until that happened. And then season after that, everybody was talking about America's Best Dance Crew, and then we just heard so much buzz about it. And the fact that it was like, oh, well, the Jabberwockies just won that. We know them dudes. We just actually seen them at Freestyle Session 6 months ago before they did the show, and now they just won the show. And so everybody's saying, we could win. We could do that show. And then, of course, by that time, everybody was on that same, it was like, oh, this is like a choreography, like dance competition show, but it had all these different styles that were in it and all these different crews. And so, of course, we were like, yeah. So we actually auditioned season 2 and
Oh,
actually
really?
made it. Yeah, we actually got selected to be on the show and made it past both, I think, audition rounds. So, of course, there was a round where you kind of come in, you make up your own routine that's either like 2 or 3 minutes long. And then you come
Okay.
back, and if you get a call back, then you come back, and then they they have somebody, like they have a team of choreographers, which is the second round, which is the choreo round, which is like, can you pick up choreography and can you do other choreography besides the stuff that you make up? So
Okay.
that's usually how auditions go. Is they usually come in and like, yep, do your own thing, show us who you are, sell yourself, cool. And then they're like, all right, yeah, we like your look, we like what you do, you have this speciality, great. All right, now the callbacks are, here's the callbacks. You come back, and then we're going to have somebody teach you some choreography, and then you're going to do the choreography for the panel, which is the choreographers and usually the person who's producing the job, whether it's the show or the commercial or the whatever. And it's
Uh-huh.
usually a team of people. It's like a couple choreographers, some show producers, and some directors and some cameramen and people that are going to be like filming everything. So they're usually the
Oh,
people
right.
that you're auditioning for in the room. And then after you display how well you know the choreo, then you go into like freestyling and kind of like being your own person and showcasing your own stuff again. So that's usually in the industry how auditions go. So we did that and made it past both rounds. And then they asked us, and like, we're handing out paperwork like, okay, yeah, we want you guys on the show. We like your story. Da, da, da. We're getting ready to sign contracts, and they wanted to do some like B-roll because, of course, they want to develop stories and develop like a
Oh,
fan
yeah.
base for all the different crews. And so we're just filming some extra B-roll stuff that they want to insert into the package. And the package is the whole little vignette of where they introduce every crew and then talk about where they came from and all their origins and backgrounds and, you know, what their goal is and why they want to win, all that stuff, right?
Yes.
So we're filming some dancing for that little pilot, and Jerome hurt his knee. Jerome hurts himself,
Oh, no.
and we didn't want to continue and do the show. Like he had torn meniscus in his knee or something like that. Like yeah, he had. I think he did something and he felt his knee pop, and later on, come to find out it was a torn meniscus. But we didn't want to move on and do the show without him because we felt we needed like core members and like key people, you know,
Mm.
to have a shot at winning. And so we pulled out. So we were like, no, we're not going to do it. And Super Crew also had auditioned that same year. So that's why they got selected for the show, because we pulled out because they were ready to hand us a contract to put us on the show. But when Jerome got hurt, we were like, no, we're not going to do it without him. This and that and the third. So Super
Okay.
Crew was also the other B-Boy crew that made it. So they got pulled into season 2 and got accepted. And then they go down to, or they proceed forward to win season 2. And that was like a
Yes.
big thing. And we're like, yo, that's crazy. Like, meanwhile, I think before like Super Crew, like I said, we just seen them guys, you know, across the world, you know, in the B-boy space and at a
Right.
B-boy competition. And that was like the early start of Super Crew. It was like the birth of Super Crew was like in the 2000s. So by that time, it was already like 2004, 2006. And we had just won against Super Crew in London in 2004 at the World B-Boy Championships. So fast
Oh,
forward to the
okay.
TV show, then they get
Uh-huh.
on the TV show and then they win that. We're like, yo, that could have been us. Like, oh, and at the time, I used to think like that show was just a little bit corny. You know what I mean? Like it was just something because
Yeah.
I was in full hip hop mode. In my early 20s, it was all about b-boying and hip hop, and everything else to me was like, that's whack. It's not real hip hop and bullshit and TV. And I was just that, I was that b-boy. Like, nah, if it ain't b-boying, if it ain't real hip hop, I ain't fucking with it. Like,
Yes, yeah.
yeah, so all that stuff that was on MTV, I kind of just looked at like this, like I kind of scuffed at. I was like, they ain't no real shit. Like they ain't coming to freestyle session. None of them cats ain't coming to, you know, at the time IBE and all the stuff that we were doing. It's on the underground because it's underground. It's like, oh, it's that
Right.
fucking mainstream bullshit, you know. And then third season happens, Quest Crew wins. And again, these are all like, and the funny thing is in the industry world, one B-Boy Crew
Uh-huh.
really won that show. But they classify Jabba, they classify Super Crew, and they classify Quest Crew all as the same category, which is B-Boy. That's a B-Boy Crew won 3 seasons in a row. And so by the time we're auditioning for the fourth season, because at first I was kind of like, you know what, fuck that show. I don't want to do that show. And I was like reluctant to do it because the cats, like after Jerome got healed up and we were doing all this other stuff and we had gotten our holiday from the mayor in Seattle, we were kind of blowing up on the underground.
Yes, yes.
Everybody came back and, we had a little meeting and Cats called me and was like, yo, man, we want to audition again for America's Best Dance Crew. And I'm like, why? Like, we don't need that fucking show. And then, also at the time, we're seeing people do like some of our trademark routines. We're seeing people doing like the Jackson lean, and we're seeing people do like the arm bar and the wind up head spin.
Right.
So we're seeing like a lot of like our stuff, and people are like tagging us and referencing us like, yo, man, have y'all seen this new show? And these cats is out there doing your moves and this and that. So we start really watching the show, and we're watching all these different like choreo crews that have b-boys in them do all these like Massive Monkee based routines, and we're sitting at home like, ain't this a bitch? Like, really? Word? You guys are just really like the Jackson? Like the what? Like, we're just in astonishment like the whole time, and almost like kind of like discussing. So that was everybody's answer, was like, okay, we need to go on the show and do these routines and show the world like, yo, a lot of this stuff, like cats are like inspired by us and what we're doing, especially if they have a b-boy in their crew. Like, there ain't no way that they're doing that, and it's a coincidence that they're doing this routine or it has this kind of blueprint, and they don't know where it comes from. So but I guess again, I was kind of like over it at the time. I was like, man, fuck that show. Yes. We're doing all this other stuff, and then we got to get ready for freestyle session. We got to get ready for UK champs, man. Fuck ABDC. I was kind of in that space.
Right.
But everybody, kind of outvoted me. It was like, yo, man, well, we need you though. Like, we need you. I'm like, all right. I'm a team player. Okay, let's go. Let's do it. Let's audition. Let's get it. If we're gonna do it, then let's do it. Did it. Auditioned for season 4, and we were kind of like we were set up to be the fall guys because they didn't want another b-boy crew winning the show.
Oh, okay.
And there was like a whole bunch of different arcs that they were trying to get. They were trying to get like the first all-female crew to win, and that was our season. But that was because they slipped up, and it should have been the season before that, and it was Beat Freaks that really should have won. That was like the first all-girl squad. I love We Are Heroes. Freaks, yeah. Those are all my girls. But if you were going to talk about a squad, an all-girl squad that should have won, it was Beat Freaks all day long. But, that back and forth between Quest and Beat Freaks, it was like, ooh, like they were both like this, like all season long, and then Quest just inched out by pulling out just a magnificent routine literally at the finale, and it was just kind of like, because a lot of the stuff is it's not scripted, but the storyline is thought of before. That's how they choose the crews, is making like the storyline so they can have each week and they can tie all these little these episodes together to make it entertaining and kind of drama filled and exciting. So it gives you the roller coaster. So when they select the teams, they're selecting the teams based on, do they fit in the story? Okay, how can we make this a climactic point, and what story can we tell? It's like, ooh, the B-boy is this and the B-boy is that. They're gonna so funny thing is, we were like, yo, only one B-boy crew really won ABDC, and that was Super Crew. But Jabba is a collective of B-boys, and Super Crew, or not Super Crew, Quest Crew is also same. It's like a collective of. But the minute you go upside down on TV, instantly they're like, oh, B-boy. That's a B-boy crew. So we were like, everybody was ready for a B-boy crew to lose. And so we were set up as the fall guys. So, but I mean, we made it to top 3.
Yeah.
But that was a crazy experience too, because I was also like seeing into like the industry side of things and how they film and tape and like all the stuff like production wise that goes on behind the scenes of that show. It's like, oh, this is how they develop and make, and okay, because we were filming on Warner Brothers Studio. Okay. And then we were staying at a hotel in Burbank, California. It was like right down the street, about 15-minute drive, and lived at a hotel, literally the Marriott on like right across the street from the Bob Hope Airport for like 2.5, 3 months. It's where we rehearsed. It's where we made up our routines. Literally, all these dance crews are just in this hotel, just running amok.
Oh wow, that's a that's a crazy experience, but then it's pretty tight, huh? Great experience.
Yeah, because you're like isolated with all these other dancers, and it's like, okay, what do we do? Because they don't let you leave the hotel without like wranglers, and everything is very,
Oh
encapsulated
really?
and isolated, and like, yeah, so it's not like we can just leave and come and go as we please. It's like, no, we got to check in with people, and we got like literally monitors like up and down the halls, and so like we can hang out in the hotel all we want. We had the pool, we had the gym, we had the rehearsal rooms, and literally it's just like these late teens, mid 20-year-olds just running around this hotel just trying to keep themselves entertained. So it's, a whole lot of dance talk and dancing and hanging out at the pool and battles happening and just all like it's like camp.
Ah, yes. They're
It was
running a
like camp.
show. They didn't want
Right.
to.
And then certain days it was like, oh, we got filming today. So we have to be like driven over to Warner Brothers, and then we got our costumes and wardrobes, and then they got to do each crew and how they're going to film each dance routine and, what stunts they were trying to get. And then they got the judges, and everything is filmed in like chunks and segments. And then they piece it all together for the episode. And it's
Wow.
live studio as well. So we get through, like, we're rehearsing a lot of like what's going on in the day, and this is before the studio audience even gets there, and then the studio audience gets there, and then we pretty much run the show.
Dang.
So by the time that the studio audience sees like what dance routine we're doing, we've already done it like 3 or 4 times just for cameras and but in costume as if we're doing the show, but it's just for cuts and edits. So if like somebody slips up or whatnot and it's too bad, like they can switch out like certain clips, but they're not filming, so you don't see like the TV audience, so they can take like if it's a full on frontal clip, they can go, okay, we can replace that one with this one because they fucked up on that, and we can put this one in. This one has a little bit more of a better edit, and then they just insert that into the episode. But then all the live studio stuff is like they film it maybe once or twice,
Okay.
and they're like, all right, you get one go at this, like here you go, and then that's with the studio audience, and they're like, okay, we're gonna do it one more time because we're gonna switch cameras, we're gonna get a different camera angle, but this is your last go at it. Here you go. And it's always different when the studio audience is in the building. You know what I mean? It's a whole different amount of energy that comes in because now you got these people like
Oh,
cheering,
yeah.
and you got the producers, and they're handing out signs of crews that they want you to cheer for and support and whatnot. Because we're like, yo, how did these people get like these Massive Monkey banners that are made, that like stuff that
Oh,
like
I
all this
see.
little artwork, all the stuff that's like they're holding up in the stands, and it's
Uh-huh.
like the baseball games when you got people that like kind of home make the team that they're supporting, and they make some kind of artwork or something that the
Yeah.
studio and like the producers are giving that to people as they're coming in to just watch a show. They have no idea,
Wow.
like at the time. Some of them do because they're other dancers, and then some of them are like, okay, here, take this because it's kind of also like the foreshadow is like, oh, who's gonna win this week? Oh, all this Massive Monkey stuff is all in the audience. So, like, oh, got it. And we're seeing all these banners, people going, Massive. Like, it's like, what the, and then you'll see it like the room is divided in half. So you see like half, this crew has a whole bunch of fans over there. Then this crew has, it's like, oh, this is crazy. This is
That
all,
is.
like, it's all conducted. Not necessarily scripted, but it is conducted. It's like, oh, okay. There's people
Nice.
actually like telling people when to cheer, when to sit down, like somebody in the crowd going applause. Like all that stuff is
Yeah.
genuinely happening.
Dang. Cool. The mention before in the story, the challenges was
Mm-hmm.
that pre-challenge, and you guys will have a challenge. Is that way in challenges in the song,
Mm-hmm.
and then you guys will kind of make up your routine through
Yep.
that.
And they
Okay.
would always throw like some crazy mess at like each crew, and it was like whatever their weaknesses were, whatever like they normally didn't do, whatever their strong suit wasn't. That was what the challenge was. So for us, it was like, oh, well, we want to see the B-Boys do choreography because, in that time, it was in the dance world, the division was between like freestylers and specialists
Uh huh.
and choreo dancers and studio dancers. There was always this divide. So it was like a lot like in breaking, like the segregation that came with like, oh, you do power or you do footwork or you're a style head, or it was a lot of that same segregation in an overall like encompassing dancing, it was that. It was like in the Hollywood in the industry, it was like, oh, we're a freestyler or specialist. Like you had a speciality, whether it was bone breaking, breaking, crumping, popping. You know, you were a specialist at something. Usually, all the freestyles and the specialists were together, but they didn't like doing choreography. You had a lot of the choreography heads that were good at picking up 32 8 counts of 8 and doing choreography and dancing, you know, and formations and all that, but couldn't freestyle and couldn't just say, okay, you couldn't dance in a cypher and not be counting or not do something that was rehearsed. So in the industry in Hollywood, that was like a beef. That was like a thing. And like cats would always like politic and it was like, oh, well, freestyle dancers now, they can't do choreography. And the freestyle dancers and the beat, like the specialists were like, well, you know, studio heads you can't express yourselves. You can't freestyle. So whatever, like come battle, come get these rounds. Like, and that was always, you know, and on jobs, it was always that tension. It was like,
Clash, oh,
yeah, it was like who got choreography. And so anybody that came in that could do both, those were the cats that were like feared. It was like, oh, so I came in like most freestyle cats and it was like, okay, I kind of caught on quick to that. I was like, okay, I need to be able to be versatile and not only do what I'm good at, but also be good at picking up somebody else's movement and somebody else's dance steps. And so I had to get the training. And then once I became proficient at like doing choreography, then it was a thing. Then it was like, oh shit, here comes so and so, here comes so and so, because these are all the dancers that are like versatile. They got styles, and it's like, oh, they can do choreography, they can tumble, they could, you know, they could break, they could And then also me with my stature, I was in a small category of people that were always booking the same amount like of jobs, because in the Hollywood scene, you could say like, I was in a small classroom. It was like always the same 30 people that I would see at certain auditions versus saying like, oh, we need hot brunettes for an audition for a job or for a tour. But that would be like 300 or 400 girls. Like that line would be 2 miles long. And that's just attractive brunettes. And then they say, okay, well, we want hot blondes that are in between the height of 5'6" and 5'7" that have this kind of look. Again, that line is 2 miles long because it's at least 200 to 300 girls. Okay. When you're talking about athletic guys, 5'7" and up, you know what I mean? Like hitting like 6 foot, built like everybody like is built like they play like a sport, like either like football or when you're talking about, they're like, yeah, we want athletic dudes about 5'7" and up, like 5'7" to 6'2", athletic, but can do stunts or tumble or anything crazy dynamic. That's a small group of cats in Hollywood that have that look, that can do that, that are dancing for other artists that are like grown men, you know what I mean? That aren't like little artists like Bieber and whatnot, because a lot of the guys that were running the scene when it came to people from our world, it was a lot of the Florida guys, it was a lot of the Skill Methods, it was a lot of the Street Masters. Those guys were there in Hollywood like 5 years prior to me getting there and like discovering that side of like the dance. And when I decided to try dancing as like the full-time career, like a lot of those guys were already there and already had been working a good 3, 4, 5+ years already. They were already in a lot of dance movies that were out there. Step Up 2, You Got Served, all like that whole genre of dance flicks. Those guys were already there doing everything. I'm talking like I've seen flips in all the dance movies, like let alone like Cloud, like let alone a lot of them guys out there. Yes. So that was prior to me getting there. So I got it at the tail end of that. And that was around the time LXD was out. Remember, if you remember League of Extraordinary Dancers, that was literally like the time when I got to Cali, because that was one of like my major goals, was trying to get into Groovaloos and trying to get into LXD. Because those are like the two popular things that was like for dancers, that was like a consistent thing. I didn't even think about dancing for an artist and all of that, because again, all those guys are like 5'5", 5'6", and under, and they weigh about like 140, 150 pounds, you know, at most. So when you bump that up and you get guys that are like 5'9", 5'10", 180, 190 pounds that can move like the little dudes, then of course, then we get snatched up by the Chris Browns, the Jason Derulos, the Ushers, like the guys that are, those artists, the Justin Timberlakes, the list goes on. Because those guys are like 6 foot, but they need other dancers to complement them. And you can't have like Luigi dancing behind Chris, who's like 6'2", and then Luigi's like 5'5". Like that's how they look at
Right.
things like in the industry, and that's how they put together their shows, is everything that complements each other. So there's a whole method and a whole science behind it. And so, yeah, that's kind of how my step was into like the industry, and that's like the process and how like everything is constructed, because a lot of it, they always think like it's like your talent, and it's like, no, it's not only talent, it's who you know, and do you fit like a look, like do you fit with this particular camp and how the camp looks and the other dancers, with the artists and the vibe. It's all thought about, and there's a lot that goes into that process, and so it's like it gave me a lot more respect for it, because I understand it's like, oh yeah, there's a whole thing behind being behind the producer table and being a choreographer, and like the stuff that you got to think about in terms of a project. And early on going into it, we're not thinking that way. So of course, people's feelings are hurt because they didn't make it, because they're told that, oh, well, you don't look a certain way, or you don't have a certain app that we're looking for, and people go home and then question their whole livelihood, and question their whole self-esteem based on like, oh, well, you just didn't, you weren't tall enough, or you're not muscular enough, or you don't have the right color hair, because it's not for the sensitive, like the industry, and like in that whole process, like if you're not strong mentally, that will really wear you down. If you're too sensitive, if you take everything personal, it's like, okay, yeah, you're too muscular, and we didn't want people that muscular. Okay, because I've heard that myself. It's like the first person that I actually tried to audition for in terms of artists was Usher. And this is around the time that I was working out a lot, and so I was really beefy, and I was like 200 pounds, but B-boy, and but my traps were like up to here, you know what I'm saying? My shoulders, I was walking around like this. And this is around the time that Usher was on the leaner side. He was still like a thinner dude. So all of the dancers behind him, they needed athletic bodies, but they couldn't out display like the artist. Right. So I immediately got cut just because I was too muscular. And I'm like, when did that become a problem? Because we're told in everyday life, you're like, the more muscle you have is great. Yeah, you're healthy. That was the first time that ever worked against me that way, where I was like, damn, having too much muscles prevented me from getting a job? Like, what the fuck is this? And then, of course, I went home like, oh, like that hurt. Like, oh, like, well, what? Am I supposed to be skinny? Like, I don't want that look, and then, again, it's just finding where you fit. And then I got in the Chris camp, and Chris is so much of an artist. He likes a genre, and it likes a wide variety of different dancers. So he had bone breakers, crumpers, b-boys, and I kind of fit right in with that, because Chris has more of a street vibe and more of a street style than Usher did, because Usher was kind of coming from like more of a Michael Jackson, Marvin Gaye, like kind of classy neo vibe, like Neo. And
when you say Chris, it's Chris Brown.
Chris Brown, yeah.
Chris Brown, okay.
All those guys kind of have like a more polished, like suit and tie, like classified, like dignified, classy guy. Chris and Jason and all those guys were a little bit more like street wild, like expressive, artistic, like athletic looking. So I kind of fit more on that side. So I would just go for those jobs. And again, it would be like the same 15, 20 guys I would see at the auditions, because they're like, oh yeah, there's not many of us. So I was booking a lot more and a lot faster, versus people who kind of fit like a certain demographic, where there's like, oh, there's a lot of people that look like this.
So in your previous work, some of your artistry that you worked with, you mentioned Chris Brown. You danced with Chris Brown. You mentioned Jason Derulo. Was that?
Yep.
Nice.
Right after, I danced for Chris for about 3 years. And then Chris took a little hiatus, and then after that, the Jason Derulo camp picked me up, and then danced for Jason for another 3 years. So that was my life as a touring dancer, and that was a whirlwind of hotels and tour buses and like living literally out of a suitcase and just being in a different city every night and kind
Just
of, I
touring.
think, yeah, kind of going through this surreal moment of like seeing 50, 60, 30,000 people like on stage every night and kind of going through a moment where I'm like, I can't believe I'm here right now. Like just 2 years ago, I was back home in Seattle. Like now I'm on stage with Chris and like, okay. And looking out in these arenas that, you know, he's selling out and it's 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 people on a regular. And I'm like,
Wow.
this is crazy. Like, and I'm just doing what I
Yeah.
do. I'm just breaking. You know, I'm also like doing choreography, and it's like literally life had just switched
That's
around,
so
and
tight.
yeah, it was nuts.
And that's what you audition for. What you're aiming for, right? That
Right.
type of move stuff. So that's freaking
Yeah.
tight. That's dope. And then there's a few questions I want to. Dang, it's hard because yeah, Massive Monkey. You work with Ryan Lewis and Macklemore? Were you in that
Oh,
with
yeah.
them?
And that was
Right.
later, because at the time that Macklemore stepped in and grabbed some of the guys that were all home, Bryson, Domes, and
Okay.
Jeromski, and started taking them on tour. I already had been touring with Chris for like a good year and a half, so they were hearing about all my stories
Oh,
prior to
nice.
all of that. So now they were getting a chance to kind of experience the stuff that I was telling them because they're like, yo, man, how is it? Like, yo, because originally I didn't want to leave home. Like after we did ABDC,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, cool. We did the show. We did that. Da, 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 da. Now we get back to doing what we're doing. 2009, 2010. But a lot of like the crew and a lot of my coworkers and people that my associates back home are like, yo, man, you should go to Cali. You should go back and like do that for real. And I'm looking at people like they're crazy. Like, what? Like, no, we just got a holiday here in Seattle. We're performing at the Sonics games nightly because we were doing the Boom Squad stuff at that time. That's when we had the basketball team still. Like, we have our
Okay.
own holiday. We have our own holiday. We're dancing professionally for like a professional athletic team. We're doing battles. We're doing show. Like, no, like, why would I leave everything that we've built here in Seattle? Like, why would I? Like, we're like big fish, small pond kind of concept.
Right.
So
Right.
when people are telling me that, oh, you should leave and go be a big fish in a bigger pond, and you know you can do so much more of this and that and the third,
Yes.
I'm thinking to myself like, nah, like ain't no fucking way I'm leaving home. Like, it just got popular in like my own city, like and people knowing like had my own reputation and wife, by the way.
Oh yeah. It's all good.
uh, just I was like, no, ain't no way. Like, why would I? Like, you guys are crazy. You guys like telling me like all this stuff that we just built that now we can kind of like sit back and enjoy. Telling me I should go somewhere else and do it all over again. Like, are you out of your
Yeah.
mind? They're like, no, man, for real, you could. And if there's anybody that could do it, you could do it. And so it took a lot of convincing because I was very reluctant to leave Seattle. I was like, nah, I don't. But I said, okay. Since there were so many people that said the same thing, I was like, all
Mm-hmm.
right. Just based on that, I'm gonna do that because all of my family, all of like the people around me, my network had so much belief. So I felt like
That's
I kind of
awesome.
had like the obligation that I needed to do it. I needed to at least try for them since they believe so wholeheartedly, like, oh, bro, you'd be successful. I'm like, okay, I think y'all sound crazy. But for y'all, since everybody's saying it, I'm going to try it. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to make a plan and I'm going to go and do it. And I'm going to see how it turns out. And if all else fails, I can
Nice.
always come home.
Yes.
Fast
Yes.
forward, yeah, haven't been home since. Like, and if I have, it's been to visit. But then, like I said, all of the Chris Brown stuff happened, and commercials and TV, and Jason Derulo stuff happened, and then I'm just doing random
So
gigs out in Hollywood. And
before you got all that established and you know
mm-hmm,
the career achievements, let's say, right, how
mm-hmm.
old were you when you started pursuing
I was
out of
late in the
town?
game, bro. I was so late in the game. I didn't leave Seattle until I was like 27. I was almost
Oh
close to
wow.
30. Where a lot of
Okay.
those guys have went to Cali. Like I see, like I remember Do Knock never lets me forget like this pivotal point where I think it
Uh-huh.
was after You Got Served come out, and so like guys like him, like I said, Flips from Skill Methods, Cloud, Venom, all them guys have been working. You know, Incredible Josh, like all these ill b-boys from that time were all like doing industry stuff, dancing for artists, and Do Knock was one of like he was all over the place. He was doing everything.
Oh yeah.
And I can't remember. I think I remember seeing him at an event, and he was like, "Bro, you need to come out to Hollywood, bro. You need to, bro. You would kill it out there." And I'm like, "Okay, do not." So he never lets me forget. He was the very first one to tell me, "Yo, bro, you should have been out here doing this, and you could have been da 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 da." Oh snap! Drop the phone.
Oh,
Nope, I'm
you're
still here
good.
though.
So Dunock was you're mentioning
Dunock
Dunock was
was
the
like,
first
yeah,
one.
Dunock was the very first one to say, bro,
Wow.
you should be doing this industry thing like we're doing. You could kill it, and this and that. And I'm like, I'm hearing him talk, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So every time like we run into him and I'm telling like this story, he's always making sure that I reference and like acknowledge like, yes, Dunock, yes. I remember our conversation. Like I was 25, but mentally I just wasn't ready for that. I just was not ready for what that
Yeah.
success looked like because it's a lot. It's fast and it comes in a flood, like, and everybody's different. I literally was out in Cali for 2 years and all of a sudden, like, boom, 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 like one thing after another. And all it took was one job to kind of push certain things in a certain direction and get the momentum started. And once the momentum starts, that shit goes so fast, so
Wow.
fast, you know? And and all it takes is word of mouth. It just takes somebody knowing, oh, this person is here, or they live here now, or that one audition, or that one person to see you, or that group of people to see you, or just to have buzz circulating around, like, oh, so and so's in town, and they're out here and they're trying to do the industry thing. So yeah, I
Okay.
just felt back when Dunock was telling me, I think I was mid 20s, like early 20s, around that time. I just mentally wasn't ready for that. I just hadn't
Right.
I don't feel like I'd grown enough and felt I was mature enough to handle that. Like I was still just enjoying what we built in Seattle and was in a relationship at the time. So everything was like, nah, man, like my roots are here and I don't think I'm ready for all that Hollywood shit. And kind of like I'm still on some underground hip hop, like roots, like, and then
Yeah.
27, it was like, okay, later 20s. I was like, well, let me do it before the window closes.
Right.
So I didn't think I'd be doing it for as long. I thought, okay, I'm 27. I'm going to go out here and try this whole dancing thing. Because at the time when I was in Seattle, I was working still as a barber, as a
Okay.
personal trainer, and still doing my B-Boy thing. Like, and still like working and like performing with Massive, going to crew practices. And at the time had a girlfriend with a child and was raising a kid. So around
Mm.
2004 to be 2004, 2008, I was like pretty much a dad, with a girlfriend with a family. Had
Yeah.
two jobs, like day jobs that I enjoyed though. Like it wasn't like I was doing office work. I was in the gym training clients, or I was behind a chair at the barbershop cutting hair because I also enjoyed all those things.
Yeah.
Go to practice, you know what I'm saying, and then going home and being like in a relationship and being a stepdad and doing all that. So literally in the footage, when you go back and look at these battles, when I like battled Morris and Marysville, or when we went to UK champs in like 2006, 2000, I literally was a parent and like doing like all the adulting at that time, as well as doing
Mm.
all of this performing and battling and all that other stuff. So I had a full plate that whole time. And cats are like, "Oh shit, I didn't even." I'm like, "Yeah, bro. Like life was different." 2009, the relationship fell through. Um,
Yes.
uh, and yeah, we had came back from the show, and everybody was like, "Yo, JD, you should go do that. Like, you'd be perfect." So I was like, "All right, I'm gonna try it." Went
Heck
out
yeah.
2000, I think early year 2010. Started doing what I call the Hollywood Shuffle. I had to get an agency and start taking headshots and building up a resume
Mm.
and printing it out and
Right.
going to auditions. So I went through the process. Like it just success kind of happened quick because again, like I said, I wasn't in a classroom that had a lot of students and had a lot of people that I had to compete with, to
Yes.
book a
Yes.
job. I was booking a job, I had at least 25% more chance of booking a job because, like I said, it was the same 20 people I would see. So it was like, all right, well, if they're hiring five of us, it's five of us getting this job. And the other 10, it's like, okay, we'll catch the next one. I'll see you guys in the next audition. Like the ratio for me was a lot bigger of landing something than most people because then you got to divide that between, oh,
Mm.
we're only picking 10 dancers and there's 300 dancers outside. You know what I mean? So that was kind of like to give like a spectrum of how that works. But yeah, man,
Wow.
it took that one job and where somebody was like, all right, well, yeah, we're gonna put you on this job. And
And
You know,
till this day, so sorry to interrupt, but
no, you good.
till this day, are you still doing like I don't know what you call them? I call them like, I guess gigs or
Mm-hmm.
audition performances, right? Stuff like that.
Yep, still
You
doing
still doing this
gigs.
till date?
Yeah, and fast forward and kind of all like the industry stuff kind of led to my now current gig, which is I've been dancing in the Magic Mike live show in Vegas for the past
Nice.
almost going on 9 years.
Before we jump into that, I had a question because you were talking about the Hollywood. You're dancing with Chris Brown. You're talking about
Right.
Dunock. You actually did a movie with them, Battle of the Year. They were in
Yep.
it. Kid David, K-Mill,
Hmm.
Casper was in it.
Literally, our whole community, like all the LB boys from our community in like our era, was in that movie, and that was a fun thing. That
Dang,
was a
that's
very
dope.
like.
I don't know how that came about. I remember I saw the movie in theaters,
Mhm.
but what was the works? If you remember, like, did
Yeah,
someone just want to make a
yeah,
story out
from
of
the
it?
most part, it stemmed from the Planet B-Boy documentary that Benson Lee
Mm,
directed. So that movie kind of like that documentary, because it was all like it was Super Crew. Who else are the crews that kind of were highlighted? And it was like Ichigeki, Last for One, Super Crew, and it was all about their
mm-hmm.
experience about going into Battle of the Year. So, and Benson was the director of that documentary, and that was kind of like the basis of it was like what was every crew's journey to that, and how we all intersected. So when the movie came about, Benson was on. He was in like with the producers and was going to also help with assistant directing that movie. So that all stemmed through the documentary, and they wanted to make a motion picture out of it. That was like the next dance movie, but they wanted to really be specific with the dance
Okay,
style. And them hearing about like how around that time that was our Olympics, was like Battle of the Year or like a freestyle
right.
session.
Yeah, they have
That
the
was to
different
us
countries,
the
different.
equivalent. Yeah, we were like, okay, yeah, we got the Olympics, but we also have our own Olympics based in our own culture. That was it. Was Battle of the Year.
Yes.
There was no other competition and no other event that was like that in the b-boy scene. So that was it.
Okay.
Yeah, so they had just Screen Gems approached Benson and was like, "Yo, we want to make this like a feature film," and they went through that whole process of trying to collab, and now Screen Gems is now behind. They're the company now
Oh,
producing
Screen
and
Gems.
trying to
Okay.
get the film. Yeah, trying to get the film, and they were like responsible for a lot of the dance movies that we know of, like now, like the Step Ups, You Got Served, that whole franchise. Screen Gems is behind a lot of those dance movies. Almost every dance movie from like the mid 2000s up to now.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Damn. Cool. Heck
So
yeah.
yeah, and they went through the process. So Benson partnered up with Screen Gems, and Screen Gems put up the money, in the budget, and said, "Okay, make the movie." And so that's how they made the movie, was like going out and getting and saying like, "Yo, we're making this movie. It's called Battle of the Year. That's about b-boy culture." Da, 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 da. So of course, all the b-boys is like, "Oh yeah, boom, audition."
Yes.
And a lot of the cats, literally, it wasn't even an audition. Like certain cats were selected because there was a team of choreographers, the directors, and other affiliates that knew of b-boys. They either worked with them in prior
Right.
prior prior projects, what I'm saying, or knew that the reputation. There was an audition, but again, everybody either got a direct call or went to the audition, and then if you went to the audition and made it past all the rounds that you needed to, then it was like, oh yeah, because then there were also other people there that was associated with certain b-boys that were like, oh yeah, he's a real b-boy. No, that's not a real b-boy. Or not, they like kind of filtering out
Oh, right.
anybody that could like fake or front and be like, oh, I'm a studio dancer, but I know a couple of b-boy moves. And it's like, no, this is a movie about b-boys and about b-girls and about breaking culture. And if you're not in the culture, if you're not somebody reputable, if you can't be recognized by a fellow dancer, a fellow b-boy, b-girl, you're not
Uh
getting in
huh.
this movie.
Dang.
So
That's
yeah,
pretty.
and at the time I was already dancing for Chris for like 2 years.
Okay.
So when he got and they told like, okay, yeah, we're gonna have Chris in the movie, because of course they needed something to sell the movie for people to come and
Oh,
watch the movie.
yes.
So they got to get like their actors and the actors that are going to fit into these roles and these characters that are also that have a fan base that they're targeting. So like the Josh Holloway, because at the time he was doing Lost, but he didn't have as many movies as like on the come up yet, but he had the series. Laz Alonso was I can't forget her name. Katie
Uh-huh.
From the Legends, the comic book series that's from DC, Legends of Tomorrow.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, not Katie Holt. What is that girl's name? Oh, she's gonna kill me for forgetting her last name. But she's also the female co-star in that movie, and as well as all these different b-boy cameos. And so they needed a character, of course, that could kind of fit
There we
this
go. Katie
b-boy
Lots.
vibe. Katie Lots. There you are. Thank you for saving my ass.
Yes. Yep.
Shout out to Katie because she was also a b-girl, but was transitioning into the stunt world. So
Oh,
that was like
okay.
a breakthrough role for her, where she actually got to like act more, and it wasn't based on her dancing. But she knew the culture, she knew all the b boys, she knew most all the b boys in the film. Because she trained with all of those guys, like at the training facility in LA, at Jam, at the spot where it's like pretty much a central hub for if you do anything movement based, whether you parkour, stunts, martial arts, dancing, that's like the spot to train at because there's a lot of stunt performers as well as stunt coordinators as well as choreographers. And so when you're in LA and you're looking to network, like Jam is the spot to be, because that's where everybody goes that has speciality abilities, that's where everybody trains at. And so that's like a good network to be in and a good collective of
Nice.
people to kind of be circulating, information and camaraderie with. So yeah, everybody that was in that film kind of like had some tie to the culture. So when they announced that Chris was going to be in the film, it kind of clicked and was like,
Uh-huh.
oh yeah, who are they going to get to play Rooster, which is also kind of based on K-Mel and like his whole character and Rooster and how Chris was acting. It's kind of like it's K-Mel's character. And
Oh,
I
really?
think
Okay.
like that's like the base of like where kind of Chris gets like that whole like vibe from. It's like, oh yo, I'm so and so, I'm Rooster, I'm this and this and that. Like in the scene that's K-Mel, right? Like that's
Uh-huh.
how K is. Like K is very boisterous about himself, for good reason. He's like, oh yo, I'm so and so, is like that's always who he's been. So it's funny to see Chris kind of embody that personality in the film because I'm like, oh, like the backstory is like, oh, and hence his cameo like in the movie. You're
Uh-huh.
just like, oh, I get it. Okay, he's Rooster, so he's pretty much the K-Mel of the movie. Got it. Because you have all these other b boys who were playing all these other characters because that's like everybody had like a different name, or it's like even when they were making the film, they asked us like, what name do you want to go by? Because we
Mm-hmm.
have the name for you in the film, or do you want to go by your actual name?
Mm.
So a lot of cats
Nice.
chose like their actual names or chose like a character, and it was all based on like contracts and residuals. And it's like, okay, well, if I'm so and so, if I'm playing a character, that means I'm an actor, so I get the actor credit and this and that and third. Or if I'm being myself, then
Uh-huh.
I don't want to sign my name away and my rights to my image, and I don't want to have like a company own me. It's like, okay, there was all of that political stuff going on with contracts
Ah,
and
right, right.
yeah, so it was so funny to like show up at the first day of filming and rehearsals, and I'm running into Samo, Kid David, Casper, Milky, Morris, Machine, Mike the Cure, Cujo. It's like all the b-boys from literally the 90s to the 2000s were all in a room like, oh shit, y'all made it? Oh, y'all in the film? Like, oh damn, word? Oh shit. And the time, like I said, I walk in and I'm like, I walk in, but with Chris and like that whole camp, and they're like, "Oh shit, Twixx, what the fuck you doing?" I was like, "I work for that dude." Like, and they're like, "Oh, he's like one of the stars of the movie." I'm like, "Oh shit, word."
Ah, there you go. Connected.
And yeah, because I originally wasn't supposed to be in the film. I got a
Ah.
call from Benson because Benson was talking to me and kind of getting like the story since he knew I had an athletic background because that was the whole base of the movie was like they want to take a coach from, a basketball coach who's kind of had, an event happen and now he's down on his luck and he needs to be, kind of brought out of depression and lost his
Ah.
family in a car accident. And so that's where that story plays in. And that's Josh Holloway's character, which is the old basketball coach that was like the shit back in the day. But car accident, he loses his family and then now he's depressed and nobody's seen him. And then now his best friend, who was a former B-boy, who is now like a CEO of like a hip hop magazine and a company, is coming to him with his proposition, like, yo, I want you to come and build a team. I want you to be my coach for this team that I want to take to the B-Boy Olympics, which is Battle of the Year. And they don't have a coach. And so that was the whole premise of the movie. And Benson called me because he knew I was a trainer at the time, like working like a 24-hour fitness and training clients as well as a B-Boy. So he was like, so what do you think about coaching? And what do you think about B-Boys having a coach? And what do you think about breaking being an athletic sport and all this other stuff? And my original job for the film wasn't supposed to be in the film. It was to train Chris.
Oh, really?
And get Chris up to par on his B-Boy shit. So making sure that he looked the part. So I originally wasn't even supposed to be in the film. I was supposed to be training Chris. And they were like, yeah, we're going to pay you, because we're kind of like, you're going to bring you on like as a consultant, and we're going to have you train Chris on his B-Boy aspect for the film, since they knew I'd dance for him. So they're like, okay, yeah, we can kill two birds with one stone. So while they're out on tour and all this other stuff, Twixx can be training Chris and And then when they come to film the movie, Chris will be on point because Chris had a crazy touring schedule. And the film and the touring schedule kind of conflicted a little bit.
Made sense.
But later on, I get a call and, stuff. And that's always like the last minute changes that happens. And then I get a call from Benson. He's like, okay, so changing plans because now Screen Gems had stepped in and they're now putting their 2 cents in the creative pot because, of course, they're putting the money behind the production of the film and the budget. And then with Rich and Tone and Dave Scott being the choreographers of the film, Rich and Tone have worked with K-Mel a lot as well. And they love K-Mel, you know what I mean? And they have a rapport. They actually took him to be Chris's trainer, you know what I mean? And kind of like have sessions with Chris, and they gave that job title to him. And then so Benson called me to give me the bad news, which was like, they're moving a different direction with who's going to train Chris. I don't know if you know this guy. His name is K-Mel, because he, kind of like didn't know who K-Mel was at the time, but then got educated. He was like, yeah, we're going to have this guy K-Mel. And he said it, this guy. He was like, yeah, we're going to have this guy K-Mel train Chris. And I was like, oh, got it. I was like, I know who K-Mel is. I was like, yeah. All right, fair. No problem. At first I was like, damn, like, that'd have been cool to, like, get some money just to train Chris. And, I think I was going to make like 10 racks or something like that. And I was like, yo, that's the most money I ever had. I was like, I was about to make $10,000 on training Chris. Shit. In my mind, I'm like, oh, shit, that's dope. And then as a consolation, Benson was like, yeah, but I still want you I still want you associated with this film. So I talked them into putting you in the film. And I went, what? Like, word? Okay, I'm down. Like, yeah. So that's how I actually ended up getting in the film. I didn't even audition for it. I was supposed to originally just train Chris and get his B-boy skills up so people wouldn't come for him and call him out and being at the squad of B-boys. And Chris loves all the street styles. Chris loves crumping, popping, breaking. He's flipping just as much as he is singing, So a lot of that was just me making sure, like I said, like the aspect of his dancing with B-boying was on point. And to have that job shifted and then now being put in the film and I get a movie credit now, I was like, oh, okay, word. Yeah, I'm like, that's not a bad consolation prize at all. So hence how I actually ended up being in that movie and wanted to make it on the Dream Team, but I was also part of the Fall Guys, like the guys that get cut. So in that scene in the gym, I went the fuck off. Like, I just started doing all my trademarks because I was like, I know I'm getting cut, so I want to make sure I get like at least some good footage of just me just going in. So at least like they use like some good like highlight footage, and they got my whole round in there, and I'm doing like all the trademarks, like the zombie move that I got from Flow. And that's actually Flowmaster. That's a hand me down. That, like Flowmaster used to do like a set with Wicked that was like an old Commando they used to do, and then so I put like the straight leg flare into the coin drop into the coffin with that, and was like doing that. And Flo was like, "Yeah, you can have that move now." Like that's, he was like, "You can rock that." So I was like, I put that in the film, and like the Superman dive, like all that stuff. I was just like, let me just go in and just, because I'm not going to be in the film later with all the other cats. And so I was like, all right, let me just get my little shine now while I got it before I get cut. And
Yeah,
after I think filming that scene, the director was looking at me. He was like, "Yo, how come you weren't on the dream team?" And I looked at him and said, "I don't know. It's your movie. You tell me." Because I was literally going in, and they're like, "Yo, this guy's crazy." Like, but we had
Going
like
out,
the
killing it.
world caliber
Yeah.
of B-boys. Like I said, we had everybody in that movie. Dietrich, Mike Murda,
Oh, that's right.
Victor.
Yeah.
Like we had everybody. Like from Quest Crew, Samo, Crumbs, me. Anise, world famous tricker Anise was in it. And that, like him and Chris were like this at the time, like because
Uh-huh.
Chris was hanging out with a lot of trickers. That's where he learned to do Websters and corks and all that stuff. And some things like a lot of people don't know. Like Chris would session with a lot of his dancers, and like that's where he learned all these different styles from. He learned them from the people that he either masters at it or created. That's where he learned to crump because he used to hang out with Tight Eyes and Miho and all those guys. Lil C when he first
Oh
came out, like his
wow.
first album, like the Run It video, like that's
Uh
when he
huh.
was into
Yeah,
crump.
you also do some
They
crumping.
were all
Yep.
teaching him crump then. By the time that I saw him, he was already like he already done jobs with Flea and Legacy and Flips, and so he was already breaking. And then so by the time that we did the movie, that's all he did was break and would like hang out with us and like before sound checks, and we would just work on breaking and just like mess around before sound check before a show that we were doing in Europe somewhere on tour. And so by the time we got to the film, it was just like, oh yeah, like what's up, y'all? Like, so we spent a lot of time, like,
So
and then especially filming the film. That's all we did was fuck around and like be off on the side, breaking, and goofing off, and yeah, it was a fun 2 months of making that movie because it was a movie about our culture. It was a movie with reputable b-boys in it, and it was like being at freestyle session. It was like being at like a jam, but filming a
uh
movie about being at a jam. So we were like, "Yo, what the fuck is life right now?"
huh. That's tight. That's real dope. Heck yeah. Dope. And how's it today nowadays with the Hollywood? Is it getting oversaturated of the films and stuff?
I
Do
would
you feel like
say. I mean, it's Hollywood, and that's just always bound to happen. I think
yeah,
it's the same. It's just gearing, like it always does, towards the younger generation. The dancers are
right,
getting
yeah.
younger. The audience that they're trying to target is getting younger. Everything about Hollywood is keeping like a young person's appeal. So everything is all trend. It's all like, it's all
Yeah,
based on
okay,
a.
that
It's
makes
all
sense.
based on a. It's all based on a clock. It's like, all right, once you start looking old, it's a
Uh-huh.
wrap. You know what I mean? Or you got to start auditioning for other categories. It's like, oh, we need a mom, we need a dad, we
Right.
need like an adult because you're targeted. Like it's all about audience targeting. So I think a lot of it is it's definitely more accessible,
Yeah. Okay.
but it is geared still more towards younger faces, younger appeal. Like I think it's why I always try to keep like a youthful look about me is because again I started late in the game. I didn't think that I would have like a dance career, professional dance career that would span like 15 years.
Right.
I've been
Yeah,
breaking
that's
for about
awesome.
25 and then I started professionally or dancing industry wise in 2010. Like
That's
technically,
dope.
you know what I mean? Like, so now it's 2024. I was like, oh shit, like that's a long, I thought I was going to have like 3 or 4 or 5 years because once I hit 30, it's like,
Uh-huh.
oh, they want kids. Yeah, no. Because me looking at myself at 30, I didn't look like a 30-year-old because I was all into health and fitness and all that stuff. So I still looked like I was in my mid 20s, and I didn't grow out my beard
Right.
until way later. So everybody thought that I was dancing for Chris. I was the oldest dancer on his squad. I'm like in my late 20s, going to my 30s, while everybody else is in like their mid 20s. Even
Uh-huh.
Chris, I think I'm 8 years older than Chris or something like that. Chris is in his 30s. I'm in my 40s. So I'm literally with a guy that's paying me who's like 8 years younger than me, like on stage dancing with this dude, doing all of his songs. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. Like,
Yeah. You mentioned you're in the 40s, right? So what are you
mm-hmm.
doing to like training and getting out there to stay active?
Oh man, those disciplines from my athletic days in like sports and martial arts just never left me. It's a big part of who I am, and it's a big part of like my core in terms of how I take care of myself. So I'm always training, I'm always working out, I'm always just trying to stay healthy. Watching what I eat.
For sure.
It just all the stuff, all the basics, and all the stuff that's fundamentally healthy. And what trainers tell you, you got to eat cleaner and get better quality food and taking the right supplements and all of that, because that supports like whatever you're not eating that you should be eating, and getting the amount of nutrients you need through food, but you can't eat that much food to get a certain amount of nutrients you need. So you get supplementation to kind of pair and support that, as well as you need a certain amount of exercise a week, and you need to get a certain amount of sleep and all that stuff. Literally all the stuff that I'm telling or used to tell like my clients, and how they had to, what they had to do to maintain and keep a healthy, optimal body, I'm doing. Like that's just my way of life. And if I don't do, I feel crazy. Like when I don't practice, or if I don't work out, or if I'm not paying attention to what I eat, I'm not like super neurotic with it, but it just takes like being aware, just being mindful. It's like, oh, I've had a lot of, and like I have like my sweets is my vice.
Right.
Like I got a sweet tooth. You know, I like sugary things. I love eating a lot of desserts and cakes and pastries and whatnot. So, but I still don't drink. I still don't smoke. You know what I mean? And that was something I didn't really do in my early 20s, when a lot of cats were doing that. It was like, oh yeah, we're going to drink, and I just never had the appeal for it. It was just something that just didn't interest me. I was like, no, I'm good. But then I started seeing the feedback, and started seeing how it was putting me ahead of the curve when cats got older. When I was still breaking, I think in my 30s, and then all the, like a lot of cats that we grew up with, or that we knew that were also dancing, that weren't in the crew, and how they looked and how they stopped dancing in their 30s. I was like, oh, what happened? And they're like, oh yeah, I just got old. I'm 30 now. And I'm like, I'm 30. But what's the difference? And it was like, oh, lifestyle. Got it. Oh, okay. These cats didn't really take their lifestyle seriously. It's like, oh, I got kidney problems and liver problems because I drank too much in my 20s. And oh yeah, hair is gone, bellies are gone, like out. Like I'm seeing cats that I went to high school with that don't even look the same. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
And they're looking at me like, how do you still look the same? Like it's been 15 years and we've had two reunions, and you still look like you from high school, just with a beard now. Like, what have you been doing? Oh, shit. Okay. So me dancing into my 40s, like everybody always said too, is like, oh, you can't dance forever. And yeah, you can't, but you can definitely prolong the shelf life if you take the right steps. And that was something that was always in my mind, was like, how long can I do this for? Like, it was always about the long game. It was always about longevity for me. So for me to still be around and kind of make the impacts that I've made, like when I'm asked to come and show up, like Lore's was like the perfect space where I've been out of the battle scene for a minute, but everybody knows I've still been like dancing or working or doing shows and things like that. But they're like, yeah, but he doesn't battle no more. And so it's kind of like, like the being put out to pasture, kind of like the graceful exit. It's like, oh yeah, he's doing shows now and he doesn't battle. He still dances, but dancing in our space is a whole different dancing. It's a whole different capacity of dancing. And they're like, yeah, but he doesn't do that no more. And for me to come back at Lore is a kind of showcase. I'm actually better at what I do now than what I was in my 20s. Cats are like, yo, like, damn, he's still moving like that. Like, yo, he moves even better now than what he did when he was 20 something. And I look back at that footage, I'm like, damn. It kind of like I'm astonished at it myself, because it's like, oh shit, because sometimes you just don't believe that stuff works until you see like the comparison. And so it even like took me looking at myself and like kind of breaking it down and analyzing it when people started making these collaboration videos. Like, who was it? Korean Rock. He's like the hip hop historian. So when he makes like a little video and he puts like together like a clip of me from like 2002 and then me now, and he edits it, I'm like, oh, that's what I look like. Okay. Because, you don't really know until you see from a third party's perspective. And it's like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah,
and then
that's crazy.
I just kind of tells me, it's like, okay, I'm doing something right, because it was always trying to get better, look better as I got older versus the other way around. And so it seems that I'm doing that, and I'm just paying attention to the feedback that I'm getting from the outside world.
Awesome.
I'm like, okay, so I've always made steps in this direction, and it looks like it's paying off because people are starting to see the results, and they're starting to tell me like, yo, man, you look great. Okay, cool. I'm doing something right. So I've just always maintained that path. So that's good. Yeah. And a lot of it was just that. It was just keeping all the things that I did as an athlete. So
Yeah, and I would say,
A lot of that for me has not changed.
most people, like you mentioned, like back in the day in your 20s, hitting these moves. Usually, when you hit in the 40s, right, you probably more rusted, more. You wouldn't hit as good as back then, but yeah, you
Yeah.
still do it. I remember seeing. I was at Lord of the Floor seeing a person do those flips and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, he's still hitting those.
Right. That's why I was like, oh, I'm
And
still hitting the fucking cartwheel, the cartwheel full twist. Oh shit, I still do that. I'm
yeah,
like, damn, I've been
damn.
doing that flip for like 20 something years, and I don't use it a lot in the Magic Mike show. Like sometimes I will if I'm having like a frisky day, but
Okay,
sometimes it just doesn't require it. But I haven't, I just haven't stopped
you
moving.
get that hype, you feel it, and you're
Yeah, it's
still
like, oh,
hyper
we got
about it.
special people in the audience, we got stars in the audience. It's like, oh, it's a lit night. Like they're rowdy, they're ready for it. Cool, all right. Because even like I said, that is its own beast. Like having that kind of schedule, and we're dancing. It's not like we're just up there like some real like strippers just gyrating, dancing in their underwear. Like no,
Yeah,
we're dancing. Like that's a whole
and
thing.
that's what you're doing for
That's what
work,
I'm doing
right?
currently. Yep,
Currently,
that's
where
my
was
my
it?
day
Out
job.
in Vegas,
Yep,
the
at the
Magic
Sahara
Mike
Hotel.
show. Okay, yeah, yeah. Tell me about it a little bit. So it's out in Vegas, Sahara Hotel. Is that what you said? Okay,
Yep, right at the top of the strip. I've been dancing for the Magic Mike Company and that whole universe since 2015, since the second movie came out. I wasn't even in the second movie, but I was doing like these dance promos for it. And this is when flash
oh,
mobs were
really?
popular. Yeah,
Ah.
so when the second movie came out, and and the homie Twitch, R.I.P., he had like a
Yeah,
starring role in it. We were doing these little special performances. It was like a 2 week tour, and it was like I
uh-huh.
said, flash. It was a flash mob style. So we went to like a lot of major cities that the movie was premiering in. So we went to like New York, Atlanta, Florida, like
Yes.
Texas, like just these certain spots that were like premiering this movie. And they had a group of guys. It was like 5 or 6 guys posing as like ushers or people working the event. So the when they were giving out like some tickets to come see the movie when the movie was premiering, none of these women in the theaters knew that we were actual dancers. We were posing as like ushers and people working the event in terms of like merch and whatnot. So they had us helping people to their seats, handing out Magic Mike merch and posters and things, and totally undercover. And
Okay.
then they would fill up these theaters with at least like 300 women or fans of the
Oh,
franchise and waiting to come see the film.
okay.
And then they turn out the lights and everybody thinks the film is starting, and then the dance performance proceeds, and then each dancer
Oh,
would jump up out of a theater seat, and a spotlight would hit the room, but it would hit the room in that specific seat where that dancer is sitting. So it was like these little flash mob performances that we would put on before them watching the movie. We would give them like a live performance, like a live Magic Mike style dancing performance before
yeah.
the movie would start. And these women had no idea that that was going to happen beforehand. So when the lights
Oh.
go out, they're thinking the movie's getting ready to start, and they start to hear Pony playing. Like they start to hear like this remix of Pony, like you hear the boom,
Uh-huh.
and then they start like they erupt it with elation, like oh, the movie gets started. We're getting ready to see Channing dance and all that. They think the
Uh-huh.
movie's starting, and then this actual dance performance like happens around them,
Wow.
and the excitement turns up even
Crowd
volumes more. And like these women literally
going wild. Going
like
crazy.
looking, going crazy because they're like, what is going on? Because now they're realizing that they're in this interactive experience, and this is 2 years prior to the live show being made.
Ah.
So this was just like a
Okay.
promo that they did for movies, like a special little thing for like the fans of the franchise. So 2 years after that is when that actually gets developed and put into, I think, production as like, hey, we're going to make this a live show, like a complete show. So
Yeah.
they took some of those dancers that were in that promo and then had an audition and all that stuff and went through the process when making the live show. And so when the live show, like in its first conception, like I was around for that. So our first like performance to I think, debuted to the world. Like, hey, there's a new show in Vegas. It's called the Magic Mike Live Show. It was on Ellen, and that was like in 2016. And
Uh-huh.
we literally, that first performance and how we did on the Ellen show was literally the same way that we did it in the theaters for the second movie. So they had
Oh,
certain
okay.
dancers planted in the audience, and these women had no idea. And we're just, just average Joe guys, just dressed like they were watching the Ellen show. And then when the music and Channing comes out, does a whole interview segment and this and that, and says like, "Hey, we're doing that." And this is, I think, while the time he's filming the wrestling movie. I can't remember what it was called at the time. So he was doing his interview and then also promoting the show. It was like, yeah, this summer, we're going to have a new show, Magic Mike Live in Vegas. And of course they were giving out like tickets in the studio, and he was like letting them know like, yeah, everybody here, you guys are going to get tickets and this and that,
Okay.
and if you haven't got tickets, go get your tickets. They go on sale this date and this date. And you know what? I think I got a little something extra, like, oh, you guys want to see a little brief preview of what the show's going to be like? And of course, everybody's like, yeah. And then he goes, all right, hit it. And then we all start jumping out of our seats, and like the music comes on, and we start hitting our cues. And then it's like a dancer over here, and then there's a dancer out of here. And then we put on this whole show. And again, these women in the audience had no idea. And they're like, what is going on right now? And so that was like the birth and the starting point of like Magic Mike Live. And then they put out like a worldwide audition and all that. And I went to all the auditions and got kept because, I was already doing promo for like the second movie. So they already knew what my ability was. And that was the whole point, was to kind of take the franchise and then take like the shows that are in Vegas, which are very Cirque du Soleil-like, and kind of combine the two. So that's the best way I really can describe what the Magic Mike Live show is. It's a perfect marriage between the franchise and a Cirque du Soleil production, all in one show. And that's why people love it. That's why the women love it, because it gives them so many layers of talent. And it's like a variety show, nonetheless.
Other than like the grinding, the body rolls, right? Are you doing any breaking in the show?
Oh, absolutely. I got
Yeah.
and the funny thing is, there's a whole like storyline with the show, not to give too much away to people who want to come see the show. But it's a very empowering story for women and men. You know what I mean? Like, it's like this whole thing. But yeah, I have my own solo in the show, and that's all I'm doing is breaking, where they're showcasing like different guys dancing in different styles, because of course, women have a different taste, and everybody has like a different a different palette. Some women like this kind of guy, some women like that kind of guy. And so our show kind of covers all the different palettes and archetypes of men that, women find attractive. And yeah, they wanted a B-boy in the show because they wanted to showcase like these different dance styles. And who knew you can make B-boy sexy. So
yeah, right?
that was something that they were like, yeah, you're going to be our B-boy in the show. And I'm like, okay. I don't know how we're going to make this sexy enough for women to like, really, have any kind of entertainment, but figured it out. I was like, okay, they actually do like this.
That's dope. Okay.
Yeah. So I've been doing that literally since 2015 to now. So I got 2 years on everybody who's been in the live show, because I was also doing stuff for the second movie. So yeah, that's been my world for the past. That's where I've been for the past almost decade now. Right, where everybody's like, oh, how come, and I show up to battles every now and again where I'm asked to judge or asked to just come out, or people just randomly see me where I'm just like, oh, I got time off of work and I just coming out to freestyle session to kick it. And they're like, oh shit, what's going on? Like, last time I saw you were dancing for Chris, or last time I saw you were dancing for Jason. And like, oh, what are you doing now? Oh, you doing Magic Mike now? Oh, you're stripping now? And it's like, yeah, yes and no. Kind of stripping, but not really. Like, I'm not a real stripper, but it's like, but it has that, like that umbrella term. It's like, yeah, there's some stripping elements of it, but I'm not a real stripper. I'm not really stripping. And it's so funny when I talk to cats, because they're like, oh man, I heard you stripping now. Like, oh, you doing Magic Mike? Oh, so you're doing like, oh, you really? And it's like, yes and no. It's like, you can say that, but it's not like I work at like Hustlers and like making cash. It's an actual, like, it's a show.
Yeah, it's a show with Cool, man. That's tight. So that's what you're up to now. Are you having any? Are you building any projects or anything up in the horizon, and in the coming
If
future?
anything, man, probably getting the teaching now since moving to Denmark, and then trying to set up now roots and connections here because my wife to be, she's getting a lot more work as a choreographer here and wants to be closer to home and closer to family. As now
Right. Yeah.
that she's now in her 30s, and yeah, thinking about family and things like that, and just Denmark and
For sure.
outside of America, it's just life is a little bit better to live with like families and like having things like education and healthcare available and like looking forward towards the future with that. It's like, yeah, states, sometimes America is just this, it's just not where it's at when it comes to
Yeah.
systems
Right.
and help. So, a little bit
Yeah.
safer to go abroad and expand horizons and do that. But if anything,
Dope.
it's just I think kind of continue to do what I'm doing and find like projects to do, whether it's like more in theater or teach. Getting my certification, getting recertified again into fitness, and gonna start training again and like taking on clients and helping people like live healthier lifestyles. And that's never really stopped for me. I just had more dancing, be predominant, but that's something that I've always kind of like done on the back end, where I'm always getting hit up by b-boys and b-girls and like, yo, man, what supplement should I be taking? Kind of like a consultant or a coach already. So
Uh huh.
hence when things went to the athletic capacity and now we're talking about breaking being in the Olympics and now we're having coaches and all that. I'm like, oh, I could be doing that. I could be a b-boy coach, and I'm surprised that
Yeah.
I
For
haven't been hit
sure.
up for any of that and then putting it out to the world. It's like, oh yeah, like I'd be interested in being like a coach for like some of the Olympians and whatnot, guys and girls that I've competed against and danced with for years. Like they still hit me up outside of the coaches that they're working with at like the facilities, like, yo, Twixx, because my reputation precedes me in that space, because everybody sees that I'm still dancing like I'm 20 some years old, and they're like, yo, bro, aren't you like 43? You still dancing like that? Like, what are you
Right.
doing? I'm like, you can come over here. I'll help you. I'll show you, because I'm a product of Flowmaster. And Flowmaster was very big on health and wellness, and he was
Oh,
doing
good.
everything that I've done 10 years prior, because he was dancing for Usher for years. And then when he didn't want to dance anymore, he was training Usher. He became Usher's trainer and was like always having Usher on a regimen. And you've seen Flow's his IGs, like, oh yeah, training Usher in
Yeah.
boxing
Yeah.
today and running hills and the dunes, and oh, now we're at dance rehearsal, and yeah, and making sure you eat right. And it's like, oh snap, you can do that. So that's what inspired me to even go that route, was Flo being one of my senseis and one of my teachers. It was like, oh yeah, that only makes sense. And even in the industry, I kind of got dubbed as like a baby flow master, because I was showing up to rehearsals with bags of vitamins and was over on the corners like taking like athletic greens powder and popping vitamins, and everybody's like, yo, you really go hard. Like I'm talking like suitcases full of vitamins, where I would show up with like rehearsal gear and like a bag, like a pull on like
Okay.
luggage bag full of nothing but vitamins and supplements. And people are like, yo, you take all this stuff? And I'm like, oh yeah, every day.
Wow.
Like, and it blows me. They're like, yo, like you are about that life. I'm like, yeah, tell me about it, because it's only what I've seen that I'm still able to do at my age. And people are looking at me with this like look of, oh shit, like damn, you could really go for a while if you wanted to. And I'm inspired by seeing other cats that are my age, overseas, that are like 50 and still dancing. And
Yeah.
so I was like, oh yeah, there's life after 30 with this. And it's just all about your daily habits.
Yeah. Yeah. Most definitely. It's daily habits, your activity. Um, yeah, that's dope, man. Are you ever thinking about doing the like the 40 versus 40 freestyle?
I want, and the thing is I want to, and I've tried to for the first 3 years. Actually, when
Uh-huh.
that bracket was first made, I actually tried after Wicket won the very first one. The next year, I was training for that. I was like, yo, 40 and up battle. I was like, okay, this is, because Massive
Yeah.
we have yet to win a freestyle ring at all
Mm-hmm.
the freestyle sessions that we've entered. We have like this like running joke, like in our crew were like, we call ourselves the second place champions because I think we finished in the finals of freestyle sessions. I think it was like 6 different times, like 6 years in a row, where it was like
wow. No way.
literally like freestyle session 2000, freestyle session 2006, 2008, 2010, 2011, where it was like, damn, Massive, we've been in the finals in 6 different freestyle sessions, haven't won one. Haven't got a ring yet, haven't got a freestyle session title. And so I like the 40 and up, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I'm gonna get us a freestyle session title when we get it, through the 40 and up channel.
Yes.
When they made that bracket, because a lot of the 90s cats weren't still, dancing. Everybody was like the earlier 2000s. So there wasn't really many 90s gen dancers still dancing, besides the ones that you see, Crumbs, ATN, So the second year, I was training for that. And I heard Crumbs was going to be in it. I heard ATN was going to, I was like, oh, this is about to be lit. Cool. Let me get my train on. And literally, I think my first 2 weeks in, I get a call from Cross. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. Like, Cross is trying to, something small. I'm like, oh, Cross wants me to come teach a workshop, or, he's just hooking me up with a job of some kind and put some dough in my pocket.
Right.
And so I pick up the phone, and the first thing I say to him, I said, oh, what's up, Cross? I was like, who can you bring some smoke to? And he was like, actually, I want you to facilitate the smoke. I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, man, I want to see if you want to judge freestyle session this year. I'm like, what? And I'm thinking, oh, day one, because sometimes, in freestyle sessions, 2-day event. The day one where they have the many different ciphers, and there's all the other guys that are from my generation judging or hosting. So Little Rock is always like hosting like the kids battles, and then you got NPR, and then you got Reveal and some of those guys judging, the brackets for the prelim day.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, what, the prelim day? He said, nah. He said the main event day, the second day. I'm like, oh, like on the panel, okay. But then I was also kind of upset. I was like, damn it, Cross. I was like, I was training for the 40 and up. And he goes, oh, well, yeah, sorry. But I mean, you want to judge? And I said with an attitude, but I was like very honored to be asked to judge. I was like, yes, yes, I want to judge Cross. Like, so I had to kind of that was a big honor and a big thing. And anytime I'm asked to judge something, I take that very, very seriously, and because that's a hard spot to be in because of how it molds and how it steers the culture and what the kids are looking and paying attention to and how to win. You know what I'm saying? So that judge seat, it holds a lot of responsibility, but I fully accept it. And I always have. Anytime I've always, been asked to judge, I've always taken it with that sense of okay, this is a responsible place, and there's definitely probably other people he could have asked, but the fact that we grew up at freestyle session and now I'm being asked to judge an event that we've been trying to win for the past decade and a half, you know what I'm saying? It was it's kind of giving me a stamp already. I haven't even won a freestyle session. I'm already at the judge, sitting on the judge panel for the 2018, 19?
Even though you didn't win.
Yeah. Right. So for me, I was like, yo, that says something. Yeah. For me, that's why I was like, let me do that first and let me get that credit and let me get that resume stamp, because that's I'm being validated that way. Yo, this B-Boy hasn't even been in the scene and has been doing industry stuff and killing it there. And him and his crew have competed at this event for damn near a decade strong and hasn't won one. Gotten to the finals at 6 different ones, but on the judge panel, that says something about, so I was definitely trying to make those smart decisions where I was like, okay, I got to kind of accept some of these honors that are given to me, even though I want to get in here and battle and try to win a ring for me, and then also kind of rip the crew okay, we finally got one, and freestyle title there, put that on the list. And so I've been trying to do the 40 and up for the past 2 or 3 years, and every time that I've tried to put myself in it, something comes up. Either I got asked to judge the first time I was going to try to do it. Second year, was filming the movie. Was filming the Magic Mike. It was filming the third Magic Mike movie. So I couldn't do
Oh,
it
okay.
because I got put in the third film, the third franchise film. And then the third time I wanted to do it, my crew wanted to do freestyle session because the newer generation wanted to dance with some of the older generation. And that was when Cross
Yeah.
actually that year had did the open crew battles when you could do like 5 and up members. So you could do like it was like the times of old where we had the crew battles like in freestyle session 2000 where it was like you can have a squad of 10 if you had that many. You could have a squad of 8. And so some of our new generation were like, yo, we want to dance with some of the active OGs. So they
Yeah.
put a squad together and they wanted me to be in the squad. And I was like, damn it, okay, here we go again. I'm trying to do the 40 and up battle, but then here comes the squad and here comes the crew like, yo, we want to do the crew battle this year and we need you. And I'm like, okay. So I've been trying. I've been trying to get to that 40 and up. And it's only going to get harder because I think Hong 10 turns 40 this year. And it's like,
Oh,
oh,
really?
great.
Right, right. Yeah.
The bracket only gets harder now from this point on. It's like, shit.
Yeah, every year someone jumping in.
Yeah, it's like Ronnie and freaking Hong Ten and freaking Speedy from Unique Style, like all these active cats. I'm like, oh, you asshole. All y'all 40 now. Damn it. But we'll see.
Right.
Like, hope maybe this year it gets a little different.
For
Tim the
sure.
Pit, I think he's trying to, my own crewmate, he's trying to enter the 40 and up, and he's hungry too. He's like, yeah, I'm going to enter that 40 and I'm about to smoke all these old dudes. I'm like, damn.
Oh yeah. Nice, nice. And you mentioned the newer gen and the OGs during the freestyle. You guys competed with each other to kind of give with them. And so, what type of things are you guys doing within the crew to build up like the knowledge for the new gen? Because you guys, you,
Yeah.
Jeromski, Juice, you guys have a lot of OG, a lot of experience from till this day.
Well, a lot of the new generation are students, mostly Jerome's.
Okay.
I think the 5 new generation cats that we put down, like Dan the Man, Gavin, Gavatron, Kid Guppy, Noah, and Kalani. Those are all kids that Jerome has taught since they were like little, and they used to come up to like Jefferson and practice, and they were all like the kids that were kind of hanging around. And Sean Steady,
Uh
Sean,
huh.
like his dad Nam, used to run a lot of the clubs that we used to dance at back in our 20s. And Sean has been around us almost as long as like when Jay Styles, if you guys remember Jalen Tester,
Ah, right.
when he was around,
Yes.
same thing. We kind of used to just mentor him and bring him on jobs and then put him in performances. And so Sean went that route and kind of like started just hanging around us like with his dad. Um, and just
Okay.
kind of grew up around the crew, and we just would train him and hang out, and they would just always be at like the weekly sessions at the studio, and just slowly integrated as family. And the kids that we put in now, like they're all Jerome's students from Jerome's teaching program. When he had like his teaching program out in the west side of Seattle, um, he used to teach all of those guys. He used to like have
Wow,
like
that's tight.
little
Okay.
like this little like weekly like class that he taught like religiously. Like he was there, and those were some of his like early students, and they've just stayed with him, and have gotten more integrated with the crew because they were, the older they got, the more freedom they got in terms of being able to venture and go to different places. And so they would just come to the studio. When we had it in Chinatown, they would go to
Mm.
like the open sessions there and kind of grew up there with the rest of the crew and whoever ran open sessions. And so we started again just growing and being homegrown about putting our new generations, into our crew. And they were kids that grew up around us, because we've always
Yeah.
been very big on the concept of family and the concept of, and brotherhood and kinship. So, it just made sense, and they were just always around. They were just like the kids that we grew up teaching that were, 8, 9, and 10 when they started breaking and started coming and watching us like in our mid 20s, and it was like, oh, it's Massive Monkeys, and they were
Uh
fans of
huh.
us being on the show and whatnot, and so now they're all now in their early 20s, and they're still dancing, and so it was like, yeah, it just made sense, and they just kind of like got what our crew was about in like terms of like the blueprint of it, and it's kind of how we have always based on making our our foundation so strong that way is by always I think recruiting and being homegrown about who we put down in the crew. And we've had, some
For
anomalies to
sure.
that. We've had,
Yes.
older crews like when the time that we had Thesis in, he didn't grow up with Massive, but he had spent a lot of time,
Right, right.
a few years with us before putting him in. So he got a concept of, how we work and whatnot. But, as in terms of like how we always put our members down, it was always the people that were from the neighborhood and people that were from our collective space. Even me, like I was considered the outsider in the crew
Uh-huh.
originally when I got put down because I was also from Federal Way. I was from like half an hour south of Seattle, and when I started coming up
Oh,
to
okay.
Jefferson, I was brought up to Jefferson by a homie that was breaking, who was in one of the legendary crews back then, who was in this crew called the Oasis Crew, and it was my boy Jarrell. He went by Skyrock. He was the first person to take me up to Jefferson Community Center, where I met Juice and Jerome and Bryson and all my now
Right,
crewmates.
right.
I was just a kid that was like kind of new to the space and was like, "Yo, what's this? Like, what's Jefferson? What's the community center?" And then it was like, "Oh, these are all of our legends of like the early '90s, and these are all the people that I've watched on videos when I first was." So even when I finally got put
Yeah.
down, I had been around Massive for at least a good couple of years before them putting me down. And in fact, I was actually in a rival crew for the first 2 years. So when I
Really?
was, yeah, it was because it was a funny relationship because me and Juice were mad close because he was the one that kind of took the steps to kind of open up the doors to friendship and kind of was hanging out with me and getting to know me outside of the community center, like outside of Jefferson, and seeing him at weekly practice. He'd be like, "Hey, yo, I'm out in the South End, like I'm at the mall. Where you at? Like, you want to come kick it?" I would drive to the mall and like we'd hang out and chill. And I still didn't know a lot of those guys, like personality wise, like socially. Yeah, and I,
Right, right.
I I I was really close to Juice, but was asking about being in the crew, and it was a collective thing. We do everything as a council, so it had to be voted on. And because, like
For
again,
sure.
socially, I wasn't as close to those members yet. Of course, they were like, well, we'll see, like, And so I used to kind of
Right.
take that a little offensively because I was like, what, the fuck, what do you mean we'll see? Like, is this some kind of like trial period? Like, but I'm always up here. I hang out with Juice and with friends, like trying to be up. And I looked at it in such like almost like an insult because I'm like, I'm just trying to be friends. Like, I don't like. There's nothing. There's no undertone. There's no subliminal. There's no ulterior motive here. And I kind of was like what? Like it feels like a job interview at
Yes,
some
yes.
point right now. And I was like, ah. And so when Mad Flavor approached me, they were like, "Yo, we think you're dope. We want you to be in our crew." I was like, "Okay." And they were also another like legendary crew at that time in Seattle, but they were Massive's rivals. So
Ah.
it was like the total like you got served moment when Sonny switches over, but it was like no, it was like oh shit, like I'm friends with Juice, but then I end up going to a battle like early on, and then I'm with Mad Flavor, which is the rival crew, and they're like, "Yo, what's up, man? We thought you were cool with us," and I'm like, "I'm cool with Juice, but you guys act like I'm not." Cool, like you guys
Right.
aren't cool with me, so it's like it's mixed signals. It's like I get these weird mixed signals with the rest of y'all, and I'm cool with all that. Like I'm a very straight up kind of guy. If I fuck with you, I fuck with you. If I don't, I don't. Like this little in between and this
Yeah,
kind of shifty
yeah.
personality. I was like, I don't fuck with none of that. Like so, I was like, I go where I'm wanted. Period. Like so, when Matt Flavor approached me, they were like, "Yeah, man, we think you're dope. We want you to be part of our crew." I was like, "Okay, yeah." And then even that was its own like, oh shit, I'm in that flavor. Like and I was like 16, 17. I'm like, I'm in
Right.
a Seattle crew that I grew up watching on video for a few years before I knew who they were. I was like, oh, I'm in this crew now. And then so now it's always Massive and Mad Flavor button heads at like all these local events, all the car show battles, all the local battles. It was like Massive and Mad Flavor. Massive, it was always like me against Juice and Jerome and them guys, and it would be like our squad.
Oh, okay.
But then me and Juice would be hanging out prior to the battle and after the battles, like I'd give him a ride home, and you know what I mean. It was like this weird relationship and this weird like crossing. And once Mad Flavor disbanded, then it was like, all right, they were like, yo, bro, like that was like, why don't you just come over and be Massive? And I was like, well, I was trying, but some of the guys
Right.
act like they didn't want me to be over, so I was like, I'm not begging nobody to be in their like. And he was like, no, man, like you're Massive, dude. Like he was like, we'd have that conversation. Juice was like, dog, you're Massive. You belong with us. So like you try to get down with the crew, and I was like, yeah, I've been trying. Like, let's do it. And then I got battled. Then I had to battle Little Lazy
Nice.
and Rage as like my initiation. So I showed up to Jefferson one night, and I wasn't even planning on staying for practice. I was like trying to go out actually on a date, and the date was up
Uh-huh.
north. I was trying to meet up with this girl, and I stopped by the practice spot just to say what's up to the homies. Like, oh, yo, what's up, y'all? And I was all dressed like, had some like date like night gear on. It was like, oh, I had my nice jeans and a little sweater on. It was like, yo, what's up, guys? And they're like, oh shit, what's up, JD? What's up? Where you going? I'm like, I'm about to go on a
Uh-huh.
date. And I'm trying to meet up with this girl, and they're like, oh, yo, but real quick though, you're trying to battle you in right now. And I was like, what, right now? Like, are you kidding me? Like, like Massive never made it easy. It was like, you guys are assholes, man. Like, really? I'm on a date, or I'm trying to get to a date.
Right. And so you
Now you
did.
motherfuckers want to give me the initiation process right now, and you see that
Yeah.
I'm not staying, and you guys, it's like almost like they did it on purpose. It was like, okay. So yeah, all right, sweater came off, and I didn't make it to my date, and literally went 10 rounds with Lazy. It was like a handicap match. Got battled in. Had to battle Little Lazy and Rhythm Rage. And then after that, got put in the crew. And the rest is history from there. I
Nice.
was like, oh.
Heck yeah. Fast forward, Massive Monkey, Twixx, you guys did a lot of knowledge and experience throughout the time, living the dancer life, living,
Yeah, man.
coaching, mentoring, or being a role model, right? Seeing you be doing things out there to show. And, and it definitely would impact possibly new gens and other people seeing you that are growing up. Hey, Twixx. Well, he's in this movie, or he's dancing with
Right.
Chris Brown, Jason Derulo. You got this and this, and so a lot of impact through that, and it's kind of showing the pathway of someone you knew or someone that's out there that's doing things, which is
Mm.
incredible and amazing. It's such a blessing for you to do this stuff, and type of stuff. I wish I seen sooner in my age. Right, I'm 36, right,
Gotcha.
and so some of the
Right.
things I'd be like, oh, dude, if I knew that, see where it's done, and like I actually getting in the scene a lot more, learning a lot this past year. Last November was my first time going to a freestyle session, and I'm like,
Oh,
dude,
word.
what the heck? I should have went like 10 years ago, right? I should have like when I first
Bro.
started, I should have went, but I didn't have the people surrounding me that were like, hey,
Right.
let's go here, let's go here. I heard some people like travel and battle, but it was only like out in Seattle, nothing like out there, and so definitely dope, and definitely I love the scene. Definitely be still trying to stay active as much as I can. As it being an older, getting elderly, definitely want to go through it as content. So that's why I kind of came about with like the podcast. I kind of want to explore your mind, other people's mind are doing things, and hopefully this can impact and inspire and build value to other people that they can grow from this, or maybe to help them pave the way to there's a
Right.
lot more out there than just competitions and other endeavors, right? So you
Right.
can do a lot with the dance. Yeah, yeah, and what are a few things that keep you inspired or motivated to keep doing this at your age till this day? Let's say.
Ooh.
I mean, it's been 20.
I mean, it all does. Like, I still have a lot of the same things that trigger me to stay, just to stay active. For one, I think just I guess you can call it pressure, or I call it motivation to stay healthy and to stay as active as I can be, and to kind of stay as optimal as I can be, is because by default of time, I'm in the
Mm.
OG chair. I'm in the elder spot, and I never wanted to be one of those guys that starts off his sentence with, "Oh yeah, you guys break. Oh yeah, yeah, I used to break back in the day." Like, I just didn't want to be
I
that
know what you
OG. You
said.
know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right.
It's just because it's such a dope thing to see and hear, but it's always something that's you're left feeling disappointed, because all the guys that say that look like, oh yeah, okay, you used to break, oh dope, all right. It looks like they looks like they fall so far from grace that it almost is like it's almost cringeworthy. It's like, ooh, if you
Yeah.
used to break, were you even good back when you used to break? Because right now you look
Right.
crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you haven't taken care of your body, and like they're talking about breaking, so you know they know, and they probably did, you know. But times have changed, and the last 15, 20 years hasn't been too kind, or they haven't been too kind to themselves
You're
for that
right.
10 or 20. So as they're getting like this nostalgic feeling of talking to younger humans that are into like a culture that they were into at one point, and trying to share that relation and share that I think that connection of the culture, you know, it's just like,
Yeah.
ooh, but you've really let yourself go, kind of thing. And they're always like quick to be like, yeah, I used to break back in the day. We used to get on the cardboard. I still got some moves left. And we see him do it. It's kind of painful to watch. You're just like, oh, Allie, like, oh, gee, you're good.
Right.
You don't got to do it, right? Don't embarrass yourself, kind of things. Like, we believe you. Like, I just never wanted to be in that spot. I never wanted to be that guy. So if I said, oh yeah, like, oh, you guys break, or if I met any other b-boys that were younger, it's like, oh, you guys break, go, yeah, oh yeah, I break, or yeah, I used to, you know, I could do a few things back in my day, but still have enough skill or have enough ability to let it be shown where it's like, oh, like, yeah, so you're talking to like a master of the craft, like, because when you look at Storm, or you look at Kenny, or you look at any of the OGs of that caliber, you're like, oh yeah, you
They're
know,
still rocking. It's just
yeah,
them.
they're still rocking, even if they have to modify because the times have changed and their bodies have changed. Like, even if you see Ken Swift rock now, and he does, you know, he doesn't get on the floor as much, and you just see him top rocking in his essence. You're like, oh yeah, he definitely was a b-boy, and if at that, he's been doing this a long time. You see that mastery, you see that craftsmanship.
Yeah.
Storm is another one. Ivan with Is Nutty Self. You're just like, oh yeah, you see the time spent. So
Nice.
I think that's the first thing that always motivates me. Is like, oh, I'm like I said, by default, I'm in the OG position, and it's cool to feel that, but also not internally, because I still feel like I'm involved. I still feel like I'm in the midst of it. I just have work to do and come and go as I please and in and out. So it's like, oh yeah, I got this job, and I got to go be on stage real quick, and then I can show up at freestyle session. Like, yeah, what's up? I'm at freestyle session, but not look awkward because I'm so disconnected. Like, I've always maintained a certain connect, even though I've had to go do all these other things. And
Yes. Yes,
also
for
a lot
sure.
of like I think me kind of not when it came to the scene, I don't think I got as much shine or as much acknowledgement. It's not even shine, just more acknowledgement, I think, in my era as
Uh huh.
other b-boys that did like behind me. Like, around the time Machine came out, it was like everybody forgot about me because I was the one that kind of co-signed Machine and kind of gave him his first exhibition battle where we went 10 rounds, and that was way back in 2002. And then from like 2002, from that era, was like we were like the two like African American b boys that were like, you know, the black b boys that were around that were like still doing stuff. It was like, ooh, Twixx and Machine, and then Morris started coming up, and you know, all these like different black b boys from other spots were like, you know, we were like on the forefront of that because Iron Monkey was like the generation before me, and he was somebody that I grew up watching, where I was like, oh,
Ah.
that's he's the dude. Like, when it comes to black b boys and needing that inspiration, Iron Monkey was it. So I come up from the generation behind him. So as I'm kind
Wow.
of like making my name and getting my rep, you know, I'm having cats come out of the woodwork that are like me, that are like branches off of my lineage. And so when Machine came out, it was like looking at a little version of me in a certain way. It was like, oh, he's athletic and he's black and he flips a lot, and he's, you know, he's agile and he's very musical. And I was like, oh, and even our exchange and how we even got set up to battle
Uh huh.
was how he was presented. Like, and that was when he was with Flex Flav, the original Flex Flav out in Sacramento. This is when Buckingham, if we remember Buckingham, and a lot of other people know him as Dirty Abe, when
Uh
he
huh.
was around and he made Flex Flav. and they were like Sacramento's like Massive Monkeys, and everybody had. It was funny because looking at Flex Flav at the time, around 2004, 2005 ish, and this is around the time Ashes to Ashes was around.
Oh,
If
okay.
you remember that event in Portland,
Uh, yeah. I think that was one of the first jams I actually went to. I can
that
oh 06 or
battle
oh 07 or
between
something though.
yeah, it was like 05, 06. Because I remember Ronnie was doing like it was like a Seven to Smoke that Ronnie did and won, and
Uh
that
huh.
was the first year. And then that was where the stage was set, where Massive and Flex Flav finally came to fruition
Oh.
because a lot of people thought that Flex Flav was going to be the new Massive, like the original Flex Flav, and that was like um, Dirty Abe, Ajax, Richie, their power move dude, Karma, and Machine.
Okay.
That was like their core five. And they were literal carbon copies of Massive's core five, which was Juice, Bryson, myself, Little Lazy, and Domes. That was like our core five. And so there was a time where Dirty Abe had came to Seattle and he stayed with Massive Monkeys for a few months, actually, and like stayed at the house that we like
Oh
lived at
wow.
and like was just kicking it with Massive, and we kind of gave him like the recipe and like the formula of how we like make our routines and like kind of how we have chosen like certain people because of certain attributes and kind of have used and applied like the Voltron method. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, 5 different personalities and characteristic types and ability types to kind of form this bigger thing. So we kind of gave him and like showed him how we develop our routines and how we develop our crew when it comes to members. He
Yeah.
took that and then goes to Sacramento and makes Flex Flav.
Oh.
So everybody that you see in that battle, like that 5-on-5, was literally, if I could take it back to like, it was like literally like the Power Rangers episode where all the Power Rangers are battling like the evil versions of themselves. That
Uh
was
huh.
like that battle was like
All
that.
right.
It was like there was a lot of tension because there was a lot of talk of the new like Flex Flav kind of being like the new Massive, and they got all these routines now. And then somebody's, I think it was in a group chat or not a group chat, it was like on a message board. Somebody saying, "Oh, Flex Flav will beat Massive now," and then that. We were like, "What?" We kind of like educated this whole dude like on our whole style and like the way that we came up with our whole concept of how we develop and how we dance, and all of a sudden
Okay.
now they're, you know what I mean? And this was, and we don't know if this was coming out of his mouth or somebody associated with him, but we just got wind of it. And we were like, oh,
Yeah.
we're going to settle this. So Ashes to Ashes was the place where that finally came to head because it was neutral
Oh wow.
territory, because it wasn't Sacramento where they're from, because we didn't want to battle
Oh right.
them were in
Yep.
their hometown, because then they would have just sent like one sided, and we didn't want them to come to Seattle because again, same reason. So when Ashes to Ashes came around, and that was in Portland, that was like, okay, cool, neutral territory. We'll see y'all at Ashes. That's when that battle, and that battle's like 3 clips long. It's like a 30-minute battle. It's like,
Dang. Yeah.
well, not a 30-minute. That was the Zulu
I
King
gotta
battle.
check it out.
Oh no,
Okay.
yeah, check it out. Go back to like the Ashes to Ashes, and or if you like go on Massive Monkey, like if you YouTube, you can find it on YouTube. If you search in YouTube, you'll see it. If you put Massive Monkey versus Flex Flav, it's like 3 clips, and it's literally like we're going routine for routine, and it's so funny because you see like them using a routine that was based off of us, and then you see us using the original routine to kind of
Oh
answer,
no
and
way.
it's literally this battle is just going back and forth, and you're like, oh snaps, and it's a good battle. Like you'll be thoroughly enjoying it. Everybody's matched up against their twin. So
Uh
it's me and
huh.
Machine. It's Jerome and Ajax. It's Abe and Bryson. Like it's literally that. It's entertaining,
Dang.
and
Sick.
that's the stuff that like
That's
I
sick.
remember very vividly. So just even a lot of how that came about, and those battles were just like stuff like that. It was just a lot of
Yeah. Like
just
some people
culture,
don't
just
know the
living.
story. I didn't know anything about that story. If I saw that now me watching, be like, oh well, it's
Right, it gives it
now
a new
you're looking
value
more
now.
closer. Yeah, new
It
value
gives it a
for
new
sure.
value now. And so that's why I love a lot of like these podcasts that can give like these backstories, because they're quite fun. Because looking back on them, it's like a laugh. I'm like, yo, this is crazy how that even happened. Like,
Yeah.
so again, like when a lot of the black b-boys that were around, like I said, me and Machine were kind of in that forefront for that, but he just took off like a rocket. Like he was just popular, and kind of just my name was just mentioned less and less, and so I was just kind of like, oh, all right, well, I didn't take offense, but also wasn't like getting like asked to come and judge or asked to, just wasn't kind of getting. I don't think, like I said, the acknowledgement for kind of
Yeah.
putting in like the work and kind of being out there in the scene already. So I just didn't take it personal. I just kept moving. I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll go do this industry stuff, and just started
Right.
killing it there. And then that's, I think, when I finally started getting a lot more of my acknowledgement was literally after all the industry stuff. It was like, yo, is that Chris, or is that Twixx dancing with Chris Brown? Oh, yo, is that Twixx dancing with
Uh
Jason? Or did I see Twixx on a commercial? Like, what's going on? Like, I was getting more of my acknowledgement after all my industry stuff, more so prior to the 15 years I had put into B-Boy and like in that
yeah.
that 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 chunk of time. So I was just like, all right, cool. Everybody loves Machine. I love him too. Like he's a dope. Like
Yeah. Still.
we're like this. Like what I mean. We've always been really cool and really close and really tight. So when he was having a success, I wasn't mad about it. I just was like, all right, we'll bet. I'm not one for complaining. So I'll just go do other shit. And that was what
That's
kind of
good.
helped me gravitate more towards the industry side of things. And when I would kind of pop back into the culture and pop back into freestyle session or this or that and the third, cats that
So you
were
just
like younger, that were like your age and like in their 20s, they didn't even know that I was like an OG, so to speak. You know what I mean? They would like see me dancing in the circle and be like, "Hey, yo, man, what's up, man? I like your style, man. It's tight. Like, what's your name?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm Twixx." And
right.
they're like, "Twixx?
Right.
Oh, okay, yeah." They're like, "All right, bet. Like, cool. Nice to meet you, man." And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh, this is gonna be funny when I run into this person later, and
Uh-huh.
they figure out like who I am and like, oh, I've been around. I've been here. Like, this isn't, I'm not new." And they're like, "Oh, like." It's funny to watch that
The
whole
reactions
transition
and
happen because literally it felt like I was coming back to a scene and like I was brand new again. Because again, like Machine was literally that's all you heard when it came to black b-boys. It was like machine,
uh-huh.
machine, 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 machine. Especially from the States, from like 2006
Yeah.
to about 2010 ish.
Okay. And throughout
So
the sorry,
yeah, so like
finish
when
up.
I came back, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Finish it. I had a
Oh yeah, no. So
question
like
before that.
like I said, when I would pop up in the scene, like in like the later 2000 era, like after I started doing more industry stuff, like I said, cats were looking at me like I was new. They were like, "Oh, like bro, like what's up? Like welcome to the
Uh
culture." And I'm like, "Been
like
here,
I've
bro.
been
I just was
here.
doing other shit."
yeah. Tight, tight. And you know how you mentioned like machine or but you kept moving forward.
Hmm.
Within that time frame, were you having any challenges like self doubt, like imposter syndrome, type of stuff like the voices like, going to your head, right?
Right. I
Like
think so. I think it was more I was just focused on trying to be successful in the industry then. It was like, okay, well, let me just focus on getting my skills up with choreography and just trying to book jobs because another way in like Hollywood to like maintain, I think, a long career and to work consistently is to
uh-huh.
either be seen working or to be seen just getting done with a job. I think that like helped me stay consistently working because it wasn't always being in class and being at auditions. That's you use that as tools to get better. Um,
Mm.
a lot of people are like, oh, you got to go to class because going to class is like you learn how to pick up choreography and take different teachers and that you like, so when you're in their class and they see you in their class and they see that you're excelling at their choreography when they get put on as choreographers for jobs, they'll remember you from their class and then you'll be more likely to get
Uh,
picked for jobs and this and that. But also another way that I think helped me outside of doing that, it helped me stay working is people either always saw me getting booked or getting ready to start a job or just finishing a job. So I was always passing people on the way to something or just getting finished completing something. So
mm.
that was also a kind of sense where they like saw they was like, oh, this guy's constantly working. So there, yeah, his work ethic is something like there's something to it. Like we want him on this job, but every time I got asked or like, yo, so and so was looking for you or they wanted you for this, I was on a different job and it's like, oh yeah, sorry, I was booked on this thing already and I couldn't do that job. And they're like, okay, yeah, we'll get you on the next one. So I just kind of just kept
Okay.
my nose to the grindstone and just always was just like trying to be working,
Mm.
just constantly just working. And I think that helped. One of the factors of keeping me booked as a lot of the time was because anytime somebody saw me, I was either getting ready to start a job or I was just finishing a job. And of
Okay.
course, that speaks for itself. So they're like, damn, the fool's always working. So choreographers that I hadn't worked with, they were always trying to catch me because it was like, oh, yo, he's always working. He's always either, so we got to try to catch him and see if he's available. And, you know, so I
Nice.
think with that, I think that's where my challenges was just navigating the industry and just consistently always trying to stay with gigs on deck to go into and to just constantly always have the schedule filled with like, hey, I'm doing this gig now, then I got this downtime, and then I got this gig next, and that downtime and this gig, and so it's pretty much it has not stopped to that point. But I think the challenges, of course, that come up with is like getting older, your body changing, age, um,
You just gotta
location,
adapt.
just like where trying to adapt a lot of the time is just really the challenge itself. It's like, okay, because you just never know where a job's going to take you or where you're going to need to be. And so it's just having that ability to shift when you need to and pivot. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm doing this now. And, oh. So I think the challenge mostly was inconsistency of not being able to rely on, okay, like, yeah, that was the biggest one was the consistency of work. Because, like I
Mm.
said, doing that living gig to gig, it's like you're freelancing. So you could
Yeah.
possibly get the job, possibly not. You could have a dry spell and it's like not many jobs coming around. Or you can be abundant and it's like, oh yeah, I'm booked for this and I'm booked for that and I'm booked for this and I'm booked for that ahead of schedule. And then sometimes this stuff falls through, Sometimes it's like, oh, all right, we're going in a different direction. Or, oh, we don't have the budget. Or, oh, project has been pulled. You just never
Okay.
know. So that was, I think, the biggest challenge was just dealing with that and then trying to exist and maintain, I think, afloat with
Okay.
that specific capacity because I got tired of relying on trying to win b-boy jams for rent and paying bills and all that. So I had day
Right.
jobs while I was doing all that, so that's why I didn't worry about winning and losing jams so much, just because I always had a day job to go back to.
For
In
sure.
the
For
early in
sure.
the early years, I worked at a skating rink that I grew up at. You know what I mean? For like 8 years, and that was like my money for tickets to go to freestyle session or to go to b-boy summit, like made a few hundred bucks a week to save up, and it was like, oh, okay, I saved up some money to go to this event that we're planning on, and then started cutting hair and was doing the same thing. I was like, okay, I'm paying bills and this and that and the third and working as a personal trainer. So I always had those day jobs with my breaking
Hmm.
hobby at the time to go try to compete unless we were getting invited or getting flown out.
Right.
And that
Right.
didn't happen until like the later 2000s. So like that from 99 at least to 2004, we were living that cultural life. We were living the life of like, oh yeah, we're driving to go to freestyle session. We're traveling. We're spending our own money to go be at these events because that's what the culture is, or it's what the culture was at that time.
You're right. Yes. So you just kept
So that
going.
after we started getting a name for ourselves and being invited to stuff, then it was just money for bills, and then everything we won, was just bonus, was extra. It's like, oh, we won this extra $2,000 now. It's like, oh, I have extra money for X, Y, and Z.
Nice. Dope, man. That's tight. That's tight. You done a lot of things as a full time b boy, judges, gigs, right? And so that's pretty inspiring, you know. We're about to wrap it up here shortly.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one question. What are your thoughts around the upcoming Olympics? I know there's a lot of spark involvement with it, but the general audience, I don't, still kind of underground until
Right,
that's out there, right? But a lot of the b boys, breakers, and dancers know of it.
right.
But what are your thoughts about it?
My thoughts about it are, I think it's one of those things that it can be successful if the right people are in the right positions to, I think, facilitate the evolution and the the movement forward of breaking
Yes.
being in the Olympics and continuing to be revered as a sport, just as much as it could literally, it can come down like a deck of cards if the right people aren't in the right position, and it could look like something
Right.
totally
Right.
silly or totally um,
Yeah, because
lackluster or like a fluke,
mm,
and that just depends on just how we facilitate and how we. I don't want to say control, but how we, I think, steer
okay.
the movement because I think the fact that it making it to the Olympics is dope because I come from an athletic background. So
Right.
I would be lying to sit here and say like we weren't having those conversations in the '90s. We used to sit around and have those conversations all the time. It's like, yo, what if breaking ended up in the Olympics or it was like a sport or it was like something we could get sponsored to do as athletes? Because we always thought
Yes.
breaking was going to end up in the X Games. Most you talk to most
Mm,
'90s b
I
boys,
heard
you
something
talk to
that.
you know what I'm saying? Like we always thought if breaking is going to end up anywhere in that capacity, it was going to end up in the X Games because X Games was always like the sports that were driven by culture,
Yeah.
snowboarding, motocross. It was all the edgy sports.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like rollerblading, like inline skating, aggressive inline skating. It was like, oh, these are like sports, but they're either culturally based or they're like stylistically different than your traditional skiing, weightlifting,
Mm-hmm.
wrestling, gymnastics. Like this is more a little bit. This is has a little bit more urban culture behind it in terms of all the different things that X Games follows, and it's all like the stuff that's cutting edge or all the stuff that is like younger,
Yeah.
mature, like younger fan base. So we were like, oh yeah, breaking is definitely easily can end up in X Games.
Uh huh.
Much to our surprise, it skipped all of that and was like, no, we're going to the Olympics. And it's like, yo, that is so dope because it
Yeah.
deserves that recognition in that way. Because what we do is athletic as fuck.
Yeah.
AF,
For
you know,
sure.
pardon my expression. It is like you got to take care of yourself like an athlete in order to do this. And the funny thing is now watching everybody train like athletes for these competitions and this stuff that I was doing 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like in my early 20s, like watching Victor and watching a lot of these guys like train with weights and like live in the gym. I was like, bro, I was doing that as a day job. That was like I sat at a gym for hours and would just train like that and was like, oh, I'm getting ready for freestyle session or I'm getting ready for summit, but use the
Uh huh.
facility around me. I would break in like the aerobic room and then come out and then lift weights and do like a CrossFit workout or whatnot because of my personal trainer background. So it's funny to see everybody on this tip now where it's like, oh yeah, you got to train like an athlete because this is an athletic dance, and I'm like, bro, I was doing that like 15 years back, like in 2006. That's how I used to train. So
Yeah.
when people see
Yeah.
me in the garage with like water tanks and whatnot, and like doing all this like at home training when I'm just using like household appliances and shit, like I'm like, bro, I've been training that way. So it's cool to
Yeah.
see now that everybody's like on that. And Flowmaster's has been preaching that since before me, like 10 years prior. Like Flow was on that. Like Flow was saying all the stuff that I'm saying 15 years before I was saying it because he was that guy in that space that was like, yo, there's nobody that was crossing the b-boying and
Uh huh.
fitness like Flow was in that time
Mm.
and in that era, especially
Right. Right.
like the late '90s, because that was when he commercially was like doing a lot. Like you seen him on Gap commercials, you see him dancing in Christina Aguilera's video, you see it like you know what I'm saying. He was dancing for Usher. Like Flo
Yeah.
literally had, like paved that path for me to walk 10 years before I even took my first step. So that's why it's like
Wow.
it's funny just watching it come full circle and watching like the Monsters and Red Bulls and everybody's like, yeah, we got you guys these trainers and this and that. And I'm like, yeah.
You're dealing
So
with
it's
all
just
that
it's
good.
cool to see now because now they're like starting to get it. It's like, yo, you really got to treat this and give it its respect as an athletic endeavor as it is because it's more than just art and it's more than just culture.
Yeah.
It's also
Yep.
athletic. Like you were putting your body through crazy amounts of stress to do what we do. So if you don't condition it, if you don't take care of it, you're gonna really hurt yourself. Period.
Yeah. Most
You know what I'm
definitely.
saying? So you have to like you have to care about that just as much as you care about the other aspects of the dance, just as much as you care about the artistic aspect of it, just as much as you care about the cultural aspect of it. So the fact that it's there, I'm totally like, yo, that's amazing because it deserves to be there. There's
Most
other stuff that's
definitely.
in the Olympics that is like, this is considered an Olympic sport, really?
I feel you. I see some
You
stuff
know what I'm
like,
saying?
what?
There's
This
plenty of
isn't
things that we could take
it.
out that we won't miss out of the Olympics. I'm like, you know what? We can take golf out of the Olympics. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Like certain things we can take. We can take that out. That won't be missed too much because it's
Yeah.
like really, it's like they have poker championships. That trips me the fuck out. Like on an
Oh,
Olympic
right.
scale, it's like, huh? And breaking hasn't been here. Are you kidding? The stuff that we can do, that's like that's like watching literal like watching superhumans
Yeah,
in
yeah,
real life.
yeah. And I think
And a lot of that stuff is some kind of like acrobatic feat, whether it be gymnastics, capoeira, like to see
oh yeah.
somebody do what we do in the way that we do it and to music, like they're like, get out of here. Like,
Oh
of
right.
course
All
it
that.
deserves to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
revered as a sport, just as much as it's revered as all the other things. So I'm personally for it. I'm just making sure that what I don't want to happen is what happened in the 80s, which is the over exploitation and
Mm,
just the mismanagement. That's the thing that, his history is okay. It's had that experience. It's there for us to reference so we can avoid that. So if we can
yeah.
avoid that, it'll be great. You know what I mean? So I'm all for it. And I think my thoughts about it are like, it's dope that it's being recognized that way. It's about time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, most
it's cool
definitely.
to be around to see it, even though like I'm out of the age bracket where I could qualify for an Olympic gold medal, and it's aimed more now towards the younger athletes, which is cool. But we still help pave that way, and like I said, those were our dreams, those were our conversations as we were 20
Yeah.
somethings, and so it's cool to see those kids live it and to see like, oh, like it actually happened. Like, that's dope, you know.
Yeah.
And then who
Yeah.
knows, like it'd be dope to coach the next gold medalist. I would love to be like, oh
All
yeah,
right.
kid won a gold
Right.
medal because I kicked his butt in the gym and made him work. Like, you know what I mean? I'm sure every coach loves that feeling. So, shout out to all the coaches on the team. It's something I would love to get into and try to do and help be a part of. Because it's
Yeah.
so funny because a lot of people training with Flowmaster now, and I've been training with Flow for a minute, and it's like all the guys that are on the Olympic team are training with like my senseis and still talking about they want
Uh-huh.
to battle me, and I'm like, bro, you can't battle me after you train with my masters and my sensei. It's like, like Morris is still trying to get a rematch with me that he's been trying to get for like 8 years. I'm like, bro, you can't even ask me for that. You train with Flo, like that's you're in my dojo now. Like you're training with my grandmaster. Like get out of here. I love you, Morris, but we did that already, and now you can't train with my OG and then be like, yeah, I want to battle you now. Like, bro, like, you
Yeah.
sound funny.
Speaking of, Morris, he's one of the judges for Massive Monkey Day coming up,
Yeah, I know.
2024.
Yeah, I
So,
love him. Like Morris is cool. Every time I see him, it's always good times when we run into each other. But he's always trying to plug in my ears. Like, yo, Twixx, I need that rematch, man. I need that rematch, baby. We got to do that again because he wants to do Battle of the Gods, and he wants to go
uh-huh.
to Russia and do it. And I'm like, oh God, Morris, really? Why? Why do we got to do that? We can do other
Yeah.
stuff, like, but who knows? Maybe.
Okay. Dope, man. Dope. Yeah, I think the coming year, see how it goes with the Olympics. I think I'm definitely up for it. I think it's dope as well. Definitely, I wish if it was came sooner, it would be more support with families and parents and stuff. Like, oh yeah,
It would be amazing.
whoa, you give me a Olympic medalist or per se,
Right.
right?
For breaking.
Definitely
For breaking.
yeah, and I think it does help them, whoever's pursuing or love the dance stuff, and just gets them motivated to keep going because there's a
Right.
lot of could be negative feedback with parents or support might not be there. So for the people listening, there's definitely breaking helped a lot of people got out of different
Absolutely.
categories that could be changed from their lives. So yeah, it's amazing, man. I think I'm gonna wrap it right here, but before we do,
Right.
I like to do what's a cipher round. You ready for it? So it's pretty simple. It's not cipher, but it's like 5 questions top of your mind, what you can think of at the time. So you ready for
Okay.
that?
Yeah.
Okay. Set
Let's
up
go
with the
for it.
cipher. Twix. All right. First question. What is your favorite breakdance move?
Ooh, favorite breakdance moves always been 1990. That
1990s?
was
Okay.
insane.
Nice. Sick. Um, do you have a favorite song or artist or band?
Damn,
Yeah,
that's a tough.
I might change that
Oh,
up.
that
It's
one's
very
hard.
broad,
Ooh,
right? Because there's a
ooh.
lot. There's a lot. But
So
whatever you can
many.
think of top of your mind that just I don't know pops up.
Oh man, favorite song. Oof, oof,
Or
oof,
artist.
oof, oof. Or artist? Okay. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, but artist is too easy because I mean, as b-boys, like James Brown, of course, like that is the epitome of what we dance to. But if I can think of like a
Yes.
song
Yes.
that always gets me every time I hear it, it's like oh, damn it. Ah man, I think it'd be a toss up between Get Up, Get Into It, and Get Involved,
Oh, okay.
or Coke
Yeah.
Escovedo's I Wouldn't Change a Thing.
Ooh.
You know,
Yes.
I like the old soulful breaks. Well, I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah,
That
that
song,
song's
every time I
fire.
hear it, I'm like, ooh, ah, yep,
Just
got to
want to
dance
groove
now. All
to
right,
it and yeah, right.
yeah. There's just certain songs that just hit you. It's like, oh, I think that's one.
Nice. Nice. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep,
Nice. Dope.
I'm a
Dope. I
fan.
love it too. It's one of those hit or love questions.
There's some people that think that's just blasphemous. They're like, what pineapple
Right.
does not belong on pizza? I dig it. I like pineapple on pizza.
Nice. Nice. Um, do you have a favorite book, or are you listening to any audiobooks or books, reading a
Ooh,
book
favorite
currently?
book, Mastery, by Robert Greene.
Oh, nice. Nice. I haven't checked that out, but I'll probably check it out.
Yeah,
Robert
he
Greene,
literally like
Mastery.
kind of talks about like the whole like process of what it takes to master something, anything, no matter
Ooh,
what it is. It's like
nice.
putting in that 10,000 hours and like breaks that all
Yeah.
down. I love that book.
Nice. Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Love it, man. Last question. If you can enter a competition with in a two versus two or a partner, do you know who would that be?
Oh yeah, it'd be Jerome all day.
I guess,
Like that's like
yeah.
my battle brother. It's been for the past 20 years. That's without question. Like first at the top of my head, me and Jerome. And like I said, kind of getting to relive like the glory days and lores and put on this like the show that we did, and we had like new material and we trained like we Zoom trained. I didn't get to see him until I got to Seattle. But what we did was we
Wow.
trained like this on Zoom and like literally created routines via Zoom and yeah, it was a process.
Dang, that's tight.
We didn't take any shortcuts, not at all, and we never have. And so when it comes to like people that I love dancing next to, yeah, Jerome instantly like that's the first one that because we've been also doing it for 20 plus years, and I know when he's at my show, I'm like, cool, yep, I know exactly what it is. I got my back, he has
Yeah.
his, and we're just gonna go for it.
Heck
You know,
yeah.
we communicate like communication's great, and it's just like, yep, got you, all right, bet. I feel like we're like the rush hour, like the Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker, like
Yeah, yeah. Come on, Lee. Yeah.
come on,
Yeah.
hey Carter.
That's tight. That's tight. Um, for the viewers and listeners, if want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I am on Instagram, Facebook, Instagram at Twixx underscore MM. Find me on Facebook, JD Rainey. I've got a lot of different, but that's mostly like the two that I'm on. I don't think I use my Twitter anymore. Uh,
Okay. Nice.
or WhatsApp and that kind of thing. But yeah, mostly, you find me at Facebook, Instagram, and then you can always, Google has all the info. Like,
All right. Yep.
Google has everything.
Yeah. Weird. Yeah. Google. You can find anything on Google these days or
It's
information.
crazy
So.
to hear when people say, "Oh, I Googled you." I'm like, what? Oh shit! And even to do that myself, like I said, to some of the stuff that I've like discovered that I'm on because of Google. I didn't know I
Uh-huh.
had like I didn't know I was in IMDb. Like I had like movie credits now, so
All right.
you're an actor now. So it's like, oh yeah, you got IMDb credits, and so there's like a whole page
Yeah.
with like my listings of things that I've been in and like my whole resume. I'm like, oh shit, like so now like also having to remember. It's like, oh, kind of okay, yeah, I've been in 3 movies. Like I'm an actor. Like
Right. So you're on IMDb. Get
I'm a
that.
dancer, but slash like performer slash like in slash actor. Like oh, I can credit. I can give that credit and give that acknowledgement to the credit. It's not like I did one movie It's like, oh no, I've done
Hmm.
like 3 different movies. Literally, it
Yeah,
was
even
like,
in shows, right? Like you said, you're in the Ellen show.
yep.
You did a performance that could be part
So I was like,
credibility to
oh
that as
yeah,
well and
oh yeah,
stuff.
I've acted. Okay, cool. So now I'm kind of also dipping my toe and dipping my hand into that and like stunt work and still wanting to be a superhero at one point, still wanting to, be in
Yeah.
somebody's Marvel movie. Because, when Black Panther came out, I was like, oh, I want to be that.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that was
I'm
so
still on
that was
that
so
quest. I'm
good.
still trying to don, the T'Challa suit, RIP, Chadwick Boseman. And that's definitely, his role. But the fact that now they've continued the story and he has a son, I'm like, oh, there's still a chance I
Oh
can still,
right.
because they kind of have that look. And around when Black Panther came out, I've constantly had like the little afro and the beard. And some people were like, yo,
Uh-huh.
you could easily play that movie. You could easily play that role. I'm like, word? So now I'm looking at all the other black superheroes. Like, what other black superheroes are around that I can probably try to audition for? Looking at
Ah,
other comics and whatnot because I still want to do that. I still want to be in like a major motion picture like
yeah,
superhero
that'll be
movie.
sick. But
Man,
Bishop, X-Men, Bishop,
I
maybe.
thought about that. I was like, I'd put a little M right here.
Right? And I don't
Bishop,
know. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully, they do some more X-Men after Deadpool and Wolverine. We'll see.
right? Put that in the universe for real. That'd be
Yeah,
some crazy shit.
that
Just
would.
next thing you know, it's like, oh, there's a trailer. Hey, yo, is Twixx Bishop? I'm gonna dress up for that
Dude,
as
that'll be
Halloween. I'm just
sick.
going to manifest it. I'm gonna just draw him on my
Yeah,
face.
yeah. There you go.
I was like,
We
man,
can
it's
make
kind of
a.
perfect. Like, I ain't got to change the letters. Like Magic Mike, Massive Monkeys, Bishop. He has an M on his face. It's too perfect. It's like it just
There you
works.
go. You could make a short form video, and who knows, that might go viral,
Right.
and
Just
they
make a little
might.
stunt reel and just actually put me in the Bishop costume. It just might work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Dope, man. Such a blessing to have you on the show today. B-Boy
Pleasure
Twixx,
having me, bro.
Massive
Thank you.
Monkey. So great. We can find you on Instagram.
Yep.
Before we really wrap it up here, do you have any last takeaways for me, the viewers, the audience, advice from you?
Oh man. Yeah, it's just I think really isolating and visualizing what you want to do, and I think taking the steps to do so. And a lot of that is just finding out information, just taking the time. You know what I mean? Like just make a clear cut decision on what you want, and really try to I think formulate a plan and then execute that plan, but just step by step. You know what I mean? Just take the first step, make the decision. Like zero in on what you want, zero in on what you want to do, then take the next steps after. And it's usually everybody's in such a rush to get to things and to do the things that they want to do, and not everything happens overnight. Some things take longer than others. Um,
Wow.
so it's really just about that. It's really, I think, just about consistency and making the decision. Like you're making the decision every day. It's like maintaining the focus. So it's like, what's the objective? The objective is this. Okay, so getting up every day, then you should always reference back to that objective. Okay, I want to get here. So what's the next step I need to do to get closer to that? And
Yeah.
just one step at a time, one step at a time, but just consistently showing up back to the ending result and where you want to see yourself and where you're trying to get to. So it's constantly, oh yeah, I'm trying to get to that. Cool. So then, it naturally orders your steps and your focus for you. You know what I mean? Just puts everything in place and definitely after you like if you've accumulated what you want, take the time to enjoy it. Really like take the time to I said
Mm.
not revel in it, but not wallow in it because yeah, there's once you get to a new height, there's always a new height to get to. But either
Right.
way,
Right.
if you have too extreme of a mentality, then you're never satisfied, and that's dangerous. You know what I mean? Because then you never fully appreciate the things that you do. And if you don't take the time to look back and kind of appreciate what you have accomplished, then you're not motivated to get more, to ascend more. So it's a weird fluctuation and a weird like neutral, like a balance of being able to to self-motivate with the things that you have done behind you, but it's important not to move forward while looking back at the same time, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, look back and go, oh yeah, I did all that. So that means I can do more, use that as motivation to get to the next level. But then once you get to the next level, take a minute to look around and just enjoy the accomplishment, because we get so caught up in just trying to achieve and accomplish. And it's how you get burnt out. That's how a lot of cats got burnt out with breaking and all the stuff they were doing. They were just trying to go, go, go and do, and not take a second to kind of go, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy this for a second. I've worked hard to get here. Let me just enjoy it for a minute. It's just like you being a gardener and you're taking all this time to plant the flowers, and then after the flowers bloom, you don't even look at them. You just think of what's the next thing I need to do as a gardener. I'm going to plant a tree now. It's like, well, hold up. You just did one thing. Just take a minute to stop and smell the roses, like literally and figuratively. Like you just did all the work to plant them and took care of them and did all the things necessary to help make them bloom. And then after they bloom, you don't acknowledge them and go, oh, they smell great. Oh, yes. Job well done. Now move on to the next thing. We so quick to move on to the next thing without taking that time. So if anything, I would pass that on. Like sometimes you got to be your own motivation. You can't always look externally. You got to sometimes just look at the things that you've done already, because when all the stuff runs out there, that's all you're going to be left with is what's inside of yourself. So sometimes you got to look at the things that you've done yourself. And I use that for myself a lot. Like when I'm trying to get ready for battles or something, I'll go back and look at stuff that I've done, just myself personally, where I'm not influenced in trying to be like somebody else. I just get motivated by going, oh yeah, I did that 5 years ago. Oh shit. Got it. Okay. Yeah. There's still more to do. Let me move forward. Let me get on track, or let me get a fire underneath my feet. As much as I look at everything else to inspire me outside of me, sometimes you just need to have that inner push, and, people are afraid to use that, I think. And that's just really where you should start. We learn that later in life, goes full circle, and you learn like, oh, everything I need. And it's not just, mumbo jumbo. It's not just people saying it. Like it's true, everything you need is inside of yourself. You just got to tap into it and recognize and acknowledge it and then use it.
Yes. Dang. Love it, man. That's like, that's good. That's 100%. I take time to still till this day to enjoy the journey, instead of the end goal. So, appreciate this so much, Twixx.
All good, man. Appreciate
Love
you back.
this. And taking the time to do this. Congratulations on your engagement coming
Thank
up,
you,
or
thank you.
your wedding. And so,
Yeah, man.
Massive
10
Monkee Day
days.
coming up, your
Yeah.
wedding. I'll be there. So,
Word.
I'll see you then. And for the viewers listening, we're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. I think that's it. We're going to wrap right here, bro. Thank you so much once again. If you guys like this channel, take this in value, subscribe, like, follow. Peace. I'll catch you on the next one.
Yes, sir. Tune in.
Understanding the core of why you do what you do. Cool.
Yeah.
The accolades. You got the world championship. Cool. You got Massive Monkee Day. But what you gonna do with it, right? It sounds like cliche, whatever, but no, real talk. Like it's what our core identity is. It's like, I remember right before,